Okay, chat, you can stop your moaning now. We are here. We are here. And yes, we were chatting. We were chatting. You know what we like. It is Midweek Geek. It is Wednesday night. And I am, of course, John, the old geek. And I am joined tonight by Saxius and Mage's Musings. Good evening, chaps.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hello. And we have got plenty of people muttering away and chuntering away. Crafting Gamer, Andy Hewson, General Nut, Grumpy Old Slan, Halakar, Daniel Kearney, Rodrigo Beowulf, Wayne's World of Science and Technology. Yes, greetings to all of you. I've just read out more people than it says are present in chat, so hopefully you didn't all disappear when we were a minute or two late starting the stream. But if you did, don't care. Don't care. So, as we always do before we start, we have a little bit of a catch up, and I do want to say these short things, they do attract the downvotes, don't they?
I do.
They do. That one I put out, number 12. I don't know what it was about number 12 in my series. The one about we're talking about stats tonight, about the dwarf stats in Forest Oracle, has got 20 downvotes.
Yeah, but you got 1,800 views.
1,800 views, 37 upvotes, 20 downvotes.
That's quite the ratio. But you get 1,800 views. That's a nice little eclipse there of all the others.
Yeah, 1,800 views is huge, but 20 and 1,600 of those were all in the space of 1 hour.
Yeah.
So, did I get brigaded by somebody just diving and going, click downvote on this one? I don't know. I don't.
Check back in a day or two and see if they've adjusted.
Yeah, it's very possibly the case. That does happen. That does happen. But hey ho, that happens. But yeah, 1,800 views for one video, and most of those in the space of an hour was bonkers. Right. Yeah, I mean, Slan, yeah, I mean, I can see that I'm trying to put them out in shorts, and most of the shorts I'm putting out are 40 to 60 seconds long. I'm having to cut the shorts short in order to make them digestible. I could easily go on and on and on about quite how bad those bits are for ages, much longer than is in those shorts. But I think the fact that I've already recorded 14 of them, uploaded 12, and I'm probably 2/3 of the way through the module, I think that just demonstrates just how bad it is. The fact that you're finding more in the crap that I'm posting than I'm actually talking about. It's just, yeah, quite. Anyway, let's talk about what gaming we've had recently. Do you want me in short? I am wearing shorts at the moment. You can see my hairy legs if you want to, but they're not shorts, thankfully.
I miss being here. Just these tangents is just like, good God.
The tangents, yeah, they're marvelous, aren't they? But games recently, of course, I uploaded my review of the Blood Red Fez yesterday, and I do hope my players for my Thursday night session do watch that, because they've threatened to divert off the plot of the adventure so many times, and I keep having to get my fishing rod out and just drag them back in because there's no help given in that adventure. It's meant to be quite linear. It's an entertaining adventure, but its weakness is it is quite linear, and yet my players are pushing it to the limit to try and go off track. Really are quite literally off track. But yes, General Nut, you're one of them as well, so you behave. Hello, Squirrel Hermit. How you doing? Hello, Kabuki Kid. But no, that's going well. That game's that's been good fun. That has. Saturday was the bumper OSE day, where we ran about 8 hours of OSE games. Gene ran the first session, and I ran the second one, and we had good fun as always. Very productive second session in terms of exploration. and avoiding anything dangerous. Is that right, Sean?
I suppose I nearly got killed. No, I nearly got killed in the early session. I think I was okay in the second one.
Yeah. I don't think anybody nearly got killed in the second one. Guilty as charged because it makes sense. My fault. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But no, they did a lot of exploring in my session. They got more explored of level 3 of the dungeon than they've done in any other 2 sessions combined so far. They did manage to avoid anything that took a long time. It was just a case of let's go down as many passageways as possible. But no, that's fine. And then met up with my face-to-face group on that Monday for some games, and we had a fairly silly session, but it was fun. And there we go. Saxius, did you manage to get any gaming in?
Oh heavens, yes. I have been spying in on the few times when Elf was around, so I'm quickly going to catch you up on the games that he's playing in. So they are doing a wilderness exploration, not a focus on survival, coming prepared, having your rations ready, actually buying water skins, these sort of things. And the latest session basically had the players, do a bunch of paperwork, doing the preparations, coming back, sharing what they learned, comparing information from other exploration teams that were out there, getting out the map, plotting things out, and then being told like, oh yeah, there are giant frogs nearby that is killing the livestock. Well, before we're going to go off to this, 3-day, well, it's going to take them 3 days to go to a destination, and then it's going to take them 3 days to come back. So naturally, the majority of the team has taken 6 ration days in their backpack. I can't write these things myself. Like, this is just gold. These players are begging me to give them hell, and I will give them to them. They
delay them for a few days, make sure some of those rations are spoiled, and then
maybe just get them lost. I mean, yes, they do have a ranger, but there are many ways of getting lost. There are many ways of things going wrong. There are still giant rats that can lurk their way through the forest and decide to nibble away at your rations. I will do these things, and they will learn. Anyway, the big fun part was that they had to fight giant frogs the size of horses. That's terrifying when you think about it. And yeah, I mean, Elf was almost eaten by one of them, and in the midst of the entire thing, there was a bear trap, a bear pit, tiger pit that was prepared, and an NPC fell down there, and a frog decided that, oh, that's a lovely snack, jumped in after him, couldn't get back up, so you just had several rounds where I just described this poor man being mangled by a panicking frog the size of a horse, followed by another frog jumping in because it heard screams. So it's like, oh, food. Down it goes. Dinner. Exactly. And one of the players decided that, you know what? Now is a great time to get out this scroll of healing and let's use it on this. Great roleplay because the player really believed that they could do it. Absolutely. We're using 5e mechanics, so at that point, that NPC was well and truly dead. He was mangled to pulp. So I decided that they're using a rather potent magical item, that's supposed to be at a level 6 power level for 5th edition. They're using a very strong thing, so I will allow that player to roll a save or die for this one NPC, and he gets a free.
Dead.
So, he's dead. He's dead. And he's dead. And they're now going to have to go on a 3-day march up north to explore ruins where there may or may not be a necromancer. They do not know. I know exactly what's up there. It's going to be delicious. It is going to be delicious. And my Saturday group, we've had a little bit of a hiatus because of my work, people being ill, so on, but we finally got together and we did an entire session of casting Identify. That was a great deal of fun because I love it when, Thank you, Hungar. That's very appreciated.
Yes, I am just going to interrupt you here and say hello to Hungar because he has popped in. Hello to Nerdy Ogre and Mark Hawkman and GM Johnny. And thank you. Yeah, we are nerds. In fact, I'm going to start. Shall I start the hand tattoo thing again?
Oh.
I need a pen that actually writes on my fingers properly. Keep going, Saxious, while I find a pen.
So basically, my group, my Saturday group, has finally sat down and they are doing all of the counting, they're rolling for, have we identified this, have we done this, and so on. And we came to the realization of, oh heavens, it has been a very long time since we actually identified things. So there were many notes and many pieces of paper that I had to scrounge up to actually remember what they had, and that was good. And I remember that they now decided that once everything was done, dusted, they sat down and went, this was awesome. This was a good session. And, well, thank you, Squirrel.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be a wrist one. Squirrel.
Nerd on your knuckles, dork across your wrist.
Ultra. You realize this isn't going to come off my wrist and it's going to be there for work all day tomorrow.
For a $50 donation, John will write Geek across his forehead.
I'm on it.
Don't. No.
We just need to start another bidding war. Just incrementally, just make it bigger until he just shows up with moustaches and
I just need to. I've got to give this pen a bit of a rest. It's run out on the downstroke of D. Unfortunately, that's not very good.
Ultra.
I've got Ultra Mega I at the moment.
Oh, that's a shame.
The pen is mightier than the dork.
Anyways, so my players have been doing that, and we were quite happy with how it all ended, and we're set up for the players going and meeting Storm Giants next week because they do not want to make any form of alliance with dragons. They would rather go for the Giants, which is going to be interesting because I don't run with the normal D&D ordering of giants. I like my Norse mythology giants, so that's what I'm going to go with. I'm looking forward for that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Embrace the Norse. Embrace the Norse.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it's upside down.
It's upside down. It's fine. We can twist our heads. Yeah. Ultra mega nerds. Yes.
Ultra mega dorks.
Fine.
There we go.
Anyway, Sean, the ball is in your court.
Yes, gaming. Well, last week was it was just one of those weeks where all my days slipped away because I had things to do. But so my OSE game ended up getting canceled, but that was probably for the best because I needed the Friday night to myself. Saturday I was in John's OSE games during the day, so I remember you played in the first one, right? You were there playing, right?
I played in that one, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's all a blur. So that was fun. My lovable half-orc fighter is inching towards level 2 after 6 sessions. And Sunday was my AD&D game. That's ostensibly called Team Good, although they were using their alternate characters. So they completed their mission running one of the scenarios from, again, John's favorite module, B9. Second favorite module, sorry. If your favorite is obviously the Forest Oracle. But again, played well. They had a blast. They succeeded. So it was a matter of they got some good loot. Their backup characters are now averaging level 4 to 5. So we've got some good prime characters going when we return to Night Below, because that group's primary group of characters will be tackling the Night Below scenario probably later this summer, and then I'll get back to recapping those. But we had a good day. It was an extended one, though. We started at 1 p.m., went till about 7 p.m., which usually exhausts me. I know Legion of Myth is punching the air because he loves his 10-hour marathons, but I'm usually spent after 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
At least as a DM. As a player, you can do a little more, but when you're DMing it and you got 6 players asking you questions all at once, it just kind of drains the energy. But it was good times.
I'm not going to ask Elfbait to clarify which orc hole he means here, but I'll get the idea. Hello, Elfbait. How you doing?
So that's about it. The main group for AD&D is back on track for their main quest, and they're probably at 3 sessions before they arrive at Night Below, and then I can continue with that storyline with a whole fresh new perspective.
Cool. Good. And what's happening this week? Though we've got more Call of Cthulhu tomorrow. We've got Gingerbeard running OSC on Saturday afternoon. We've got me running MERP on Saturday evening. All my time, of course, because my time is correct and yours isn't. And I think has DK set up a session for Sunday evening? I don't know. I'm not sure. I know he ran a session a week or 2 ago. I'm not sure when his next one is, but that's entirely up to him. So people are running other things on the server, and we have more offers from people to run things as well. So, which is good. On the Discord,
he's running something 3:00 Saturday.
Okay,
3:00 my time, so it's gonna be 9:00 for you guys, but
right,
or 8:00 for you guys.
So, I mean, it doesn't need me to be involved with the games. You lot can just run whatever you want on there. Just ask me for permission to make events, and I'll do it. So whatever, it's there to have fun. It's there to play with. So enjoy. And if you're running games on other servers and want to bring them over to my server because you might get a few more people or new people or whatever, you're more than welcome to do so. It's no, my time is not wrong, General Nut. It is not wrong at all.
Well, I am hoping that I can carve out some free time again and get something running again on your server.
Yes,
and,
do so.
Something can return, whether it's new or old.
Yes, do so. And join in other games and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and there's a lot of loving and kissing going on in chat as well. I can see you all being very, very nice to each other. Squirrel Hermit has caused it, I think, by basically hugging everyone and telling everyone how much he loves them, which is wonderful. You big hippie squirrel. You big hippie. No, it's marvelous. I like the fact that people don't argue and bicker on my server too much. We get the occasional from time to time, but it's never anything serious. Never anything serious.
It is a healthy community for both grognards and new people and people who are interested. Simple. Yes, exactly. It's a very simple and welcoming group. Now,
exactly.
What is not simple, however, is numbers. And numbers that we put on the character sheets.
I see what you did there.
I am back.
Yes, I see what you did there. We are talking about character statistics tonight. Yes. Character statistics. What do they mean? Do they have any importance beyond mechanics? And if so, what degree of importance? How much stock do you put in them? Do you like randomness when generating characters to give you ideas for how to play them, or do you just not care? And I'm going to start here with Saxius. What's your general opinion on using your statistics for role-playing purposes, randomness of statistics, and how much impact they should have on the character of the character?
Right. So let's start with you renaming those questions one more time, so I can quickly jot some of this down. So, how I generate them, is that the first one?
Oh, go on. How do you? What's your favorite way of generating them? Go on then.
Well, so when I am allowed to actually make a decision as a DM, I love going for the randomness because I come from the school of thinking that life is not fair,
Okay.
and that should be reflected in the character creation. You should not have, an equal amount of numbers or an equal total. Like some people will have it easier in life, some people will have it worse off in life, and you will come from.
I'm glad you've said all of that, because I am when you're answering this question, I am hovering over the mute button, and if you say anything about point buy being good, I will click it. So
That's fair enough.
that goes for you as well, Sean.
That's fair enough. Now, I do understand the need for using of point buy, but like I said, when I am allowed to make a decision, well, like I said, I'm allowed to make a decision for it. This is where we return back to, session 0, have a conversation, because to me, when you have the statistics of what makes up the character, there is going to be a discussion of what is the tone that you're looking to have. If I'm allowed to go for the randomness, then it's going to be all over the place. You're going to have some characters that will be incredibly strong. You're going to have some who are incredibly weak. But the bell curve will even itself out, because statistics are really not going to be lying at the end of the day, and the probabilities will eventually even out. So for that, I'm quite happy for it, and I'm happy to go with a more random route. Now, for the impact of the game, I very much encourage players to look at what the numbers that they have assigned or rolled and how they are falling upon the character, and help weave their character into what those numbers are. I've had a character that was a fighter where I was given permission by the DM that in a basic fantasy, I had a 5 strength and a 7 constitution. I said I really wanted to play a fighter, even though by the rules I was not allowed to have it. By the statistics, I was penalized, heavily so. But the idea was my character was a fighter who had severe leprosy, and the stats immediately reflected the absolute abysmal health and strength of the character. But I had an above average intelligence, and while I could have gone for a wizard, I argued that with the higher intelligence I was more educated. I argued that with that I was able to read and write, and I would be able to argue combat and tactics, which I would then utilize for the group to be the point of command. Now, these are some creative ways that you can look at it, and these are some fun ways that you can then use the numbers to interpret and come up with ways of how you can have such characters. Equally so, rolling a 3 for your intelligence, I rule that when that happened to me, my character was hit in the head by a donkey early on in life. Simple as. And he then worked as a symbol, as a servant for one of the other players, and that was his entire lot in life.
So those low stats were an opportunity rather than a hindrance. They gave you role-playing opportunities.
Yeah, but it's really key to say here, that's because I was in games where it was set down that this was the tone of the game. If I'd come into a game where, let's say, if we take Pathfinder or 3.5, where those stats really matter. They matter in a very different way, and that's going to be impacting everything else from your skills. Then there's a very different change in how you play, and why you want a change of how you roll your statistics and roll your stats. And now the mood has suddenly changed.
Yeah. That's true. That's true, and that is why I give those particular games a wide berth, because I really don't like that dependence. Right. Okay, Mage. Let's have your opinion on this.
Oh, I mean, I'm pretty much aligned here. I prefer the rolling methods. I prefer the randomization for many of the same reasons. Also, being an AD&D booster, the fact that stats have requirements, character classes have requirements, which also adds the element of the rarity. Like paladins, you can't just choose to be a paladin like you can in later editions. Oh, I want to be a paladin. Well, you didn't qualify. Try something else. That to me makes the the game more special, like the classes more special, sense, especially when you do get them. But like Zach just said, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to craft the character, craft the story, and who you are and how you'll interact. I see, sorry, get your finger on that mute button because I'm about to defend Point Buy. I see the purpose of it in some places, but ultimately it's a better experience when you learn to adapt, when you learn to play the game, as opposed to the video game method where, it's okay, I'm just going to build my character and I have free reign to do whatever I want, which it's great for learners. I think it is a good learning place for new players. You say, okay, make the character you want and for your start, and then learn how to adapt to the randomness. I don't think that's a bad idea, but ultimately I prefer the randomization.
Yeah.
And I'm even, having been playing OSE now full tilt for over a year and a half, I'm loving the idea of the stats in order being fixed. Like when I play AD&D, I allow players to assign as desired, but watching people roll in order and figure it out, it's a joy to watch. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, your character on a Saturday, Sirketh, he's a big hulking brute without too much between the ears.
Exactly. But he's strong and he's healthy.
Exactly. And that's how you play him. I'm going to hit things. Here's my sword, meet fist, that sort of thing. He's not utterly stupid, but he's I would say he thinks in a very direct manner. That's why you play him. He doesn't complicate anything. He's just to the point and direct.
And I had no plan going in. It was the dice determined it, and then it's joy because then you see where things will go. You experience it as it happens, rather than by level 3 I'm going to be an Eldritch Knight, and then by level 5 I'm going to multi-class into a sorcerer, and blah blah blah. And so many players have their whole career course mapped out, in starting with, okay, I'm going to put my 15 here, I'm going to put my 14 here, and so on and so forth. And there's a place for it, but it's just ultimately not as satisfying in the long run.
Yeah, quite. I mean, I personally, if I'm playing in a game, I really, really do not want whoever's running it to say, think of an idea for a character beforehand, blah, 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 blah. I'd rather just sit down with the group, roll the dice,
and see what comes.
See what the dice give me.
I was in a 5e game. I left it last year, but when I left the DM, he was upset. He's like, but I have so much planned for your character. And I'm like, do you see the problem with that statement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to stats, and you can have so much fun working with stats, especially when the stats don't necessarily give you advantage. If you get that average character that everybody whines about, it's like, well, average is the normal. Average should be the metric by which you work from. So suddenly a character with a 14 in one of their stats, that's exceptional if the average is normal. If the average is 11, average
10, 11,
yeah. I'm sort of rambling here, but yes.
No,
yeah,
makes sense. I mean, you actually put.
Hello, I'd say hello, GM Cody. Nice of you to join us. Anyway, keep going. Actually,
yeah. No, I was just going to say, actually, you brought up a very good point, because the stats and the statistics is also going to be a very big important thing for the world. Because you mentioned, 10 being the average. And it's like, well, yeah, no, if that's what you then go by, I know that for a very long time, I would say that 8 was the average whenever I ran a game, because that was the lowest that you could have without there being any penalties. And I usually work with, most people would be between, 8 to 10, give or take, in the AD&D world. So that was a rough estimate, depending for what I wanted to do. And then that can also be a big impact, for what it is, especially if you're going to start, then saying, right, you are in an area where there's a custom where for what's it called for education to be a big one. Well, now you're going to be having to change the averages of what you would put down for the intelligence, for the academics, or you enter an area where it really is survival of the fittest. The physical characteristics would be increasing, but so the wisdom, because you would have to be a lot more alert. You have to be aware of your environment.
Yeah, it's what defines average is important. I mean, because I mean, if you look back to, a medieval world, an average peasant with average strength would be a lot stronger than the average person nowadays.
Well, especially a laborer. Yeah,
exactly. So it can be difficult in thinking in sort of modern terms. We assume things like literacy as well. I like the fact that in OSE there is not the assumption that every character is literate, and it is sort of baked into the stats.
Even basic literacy is quite a gimme in a world like that.
Yeah. I mean, it came into the game on Saturday. I mean, my dwarf character is of below average intelligence and wisdom, and he is illiterate, so he couldn't read the runes any runes we find. That's just the way it is. He's not literate. He's never sat down and bothered to learn. He probably could learn if he wanted to, but it's not his thing. Not his thing at all. So he prefers to drink beer and hit things with a hammer, because he's a dwarf.
He's my kind of dwarf.
Yeah. Anyhow, what was I going to say? One thing I like about the old school game, and this goes back to the point about planning out your stats and planning out your character career, is that newer versions of games often have in the mechanics stat boosts at certain levels. So that encourages players to think more mechanically about the stats, and if anything, drag away from the idea of having stats for flavor purposes. You start putting certain numbers on certain stats that you can improve when you get to level 4 or whatever to get a bonus that is suitable for your class. And that comes into the thinking when the stats are assigned in whatever way you choose to assign them. Certainly in more modern games where you do have either point buy, standard array, or random rolls assigned. And stat gains and losses existed in old school games, but they were a lot less predictable. They were more organic. They came through magical effects, aging. Remember the pools in Search of the Unknown, which had an impact on your stats. That sort of thing was expected. Stat changes happened during your career and were not predictable. And I think that's one thing that seems to have gone a little bit in modern games. There's a lot more predictability to character development. And personally, I don't think it's a good thing.
Well, it just ties into the sort of the philosophy of giving the players what they want, right? It's like, all randomization isn't fun. So here's your build. The build will be whatever you want it to be. And again, that ties back into, here are your stats. Here's your standard array. Well, I mean, speaking 5th ed, of course, but here's your standard array. Everybody gets the same stats. Everybody's the same, equal. So nobody is better or worse than anybody else. And you can plan your course, plot your course to get what you want. Whereas in the older games, it was, you got your stats. Yes, you could raise them at some point, possibly, maybe, if you found a book that allowed it. But for the most part, this was who your character was going to be.
Yeah, no, I do agree. But it's also, we're also going to have to tie in some of the mechanics in this case, because it has changed from AD&D all the way up to 5th edition. If we just compare or have those two as the similarities that we're going to be using with. there's also the expectation, like you said, the players want a certain almost theme to be going with it. We are going to be progressing. We're going to be moving up the world, and our characters should be reflecting that. And in AD&D, if you want to move up the world, you're expected to take on risks. You're expected to do all of these things, which you will still do in 5th edition. But in AD&D, the core bit of your stats are still very much you. The thing that's changed is the experiences from the beginning when you left out for your first dungeon, and when you are now going out for fighting the BBEG. There's your stats are very rarely going to be changing until you start introducing magical items or magical events that would up and down these instances. Whereas with 5th edition, it's worked into that. Part of the hero's journey is that you physically become different. You become smarter. You become stronger. You become more experienced in that. So in that way, the system of you going adventuring mechanically rewards you back in to show that your character also progresses from there. At least that's my viewpoint of the two.
I don't think you're wrong. No, I think that's pretty astute. Something I think it's important to note as well, specifically with AD&D first and second ed, it's not as true. I guess OD&D as well, is that the stats are based on the average. You don't start seeing bonuses until you start hitting extremes. Whereas in even like basic D&D and OSE, and of course 3rd, 4th, 5th, etc., you start seeing bonuses really early.
And they're linear as well.
They're linear, yeah.
Yeah, they're linear, yeah. Whereas in AD&D, they're very much they're different. I mean, look at strength, for example. How you gain a bit to your damage here, but you don't gain to hit at 16
until
and
later.
17.
Yeah, you're at 16 before you start even hit a +1 to damage.
Yep.
But that speaks to, I guess, the philosophy of the play style as well, because you're expected to be more average in the average. The bonuses will be rare and they will be special. That +1 to hit and damage for a fighter at level 17 strength, is basically the equivalent of 1 level worth of experience in skill. That +1 means a whole level of experience in ability. Right, and that's what that translates to. Whereas we'll use 5th ed, a +2 or even a +1 is not quite as meaningful, right? No, it doesn't indicate, I'm +1 to strike. That's not 1 level average higher. That's just a +1 to strike. Whereas it is more meaningful to the character in 1st edition.
Yes, it is, and it's more cherished because it is rarer. It's harder to achieve,
and it makes the difference. +1 to damage has so many times made the difference, or strike even made the difference between hitting and missing, or dealing that final blow, or the enemy surviving to get one more shot in.
And in the case of my OSE paladin, his -2 hit points from 4 Constitution meant the difference between life and death.
As it should.
As it should. He died because he had 4 hit points, because he rolled a 6 and got -2.
Right.
There we go. Yes, when he took 5 points of damage, it was splat.
Yes.
But that's what I love about AD&D is I like that fact that it's the extremes where the bonuses start and penalties start coming in, and it also teaches players that average isn't so bad.
No,
because that guy with the 18 strength, he might still only be +1 to strike.
But it's perfectly playable, to have a very average character.
But there are also just moments of where even having below average will lead into something that is just so memorable. And I'll have to use my 2nd edition game for this. The pure wizard that we have, he has got a 5 in his dexterity. It is an ongoing joke because that character will regularly cast Alter Self onto himself to have the wings of an Aarakocra. And it is just, I have to just sit and just spend a minute just to describe this drunken wizard flying left and right as he has got no coordination for his flight abilities. It looks like an Archimedes contraption, just and it's just ongoing. and it's one of the funniest things that we have, and that's just because he's got a below such a horrific dexterity, but his intelligence is absolutely fantastic. And
he just looks like a buffoon when he's trying to fly. Yeah,
exactly. Like he's so uncoordinated. Like technically, I should be saying like, oh, you walk into a door, you do this and you do that, but it's like it's just the concept is that he is a very real character in his role play, but he is so uncoordinated. He's got 2 left feet. Yeah. That he's just.
I mean, I will say, you cited that as a second edition example, but in any system where you roll for stats, have a randomness in stats, that is possible anyway. That's not going to. I mean, it's still in 5th edition. Officially, the default way to generate stats is 4d6 rearrange, which is going to create slightly more powerful than 3d6 down the line. But random stats are still the official method in 5th edition, even though a lot of the 5th edition community says otherwise.
Well, yeah, I think standard array is the official preferred method, and that's mainly because of the Adventurers League. They wanted.
Oh, and in the Adventurers League, yes, but in the rule books, the default method initially in the rule books is 4d6 rearrange. It lists the others as being optional rules. Check that out. I know I'm right.
I'd have to go into my closet and get my 5th ed books. So
I can't be bothered to stand up right now.
Yes.
I know that the option is there, for rolling.
It's there,
is there for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like in AD&D, you've got like 6, 7 different ways that you can do your.
All in the Dungeon Master's Guide, though. None of those methods are in the Player's Handbook in 1st edition.
Okay, yeah, in 1st edition, sure. But I know it's in 2nd. They didn't hide anything there. Just keep it simple. It's also like, where did I even go with this? I forgot. Never mind.
But I will say that the 5th ed game I run, I do make them do 3d6. I don't do it 3d6 down the line, although I was tempted. They can assign as desired, but it's interesting watching the play with 3d6 because 5th edition really doesn't need 4d6. It doesn't need standard array. 5th edition really supports the idea of average stats for a more meaningful game, especially with all of the boosts you can possibly get. So somebody starts with average, let's just say 10 down the line for whatever fluke, and whatever class they choose, by the time they've got their racial adjustment, by the time they've got a stat increase or 2 by 8th level, they've got high stats. Like you really don't need to start with high stats. All you're doing is starting super and getting mega powerful, but it works really well.
As I said, I mean, it shifts expectations as well. I mean, there is the belief that 8 is really, really clumsy, really, really unhealthy, really weak, really stupid, when it's only
a minus
slightly below average.
And everybody gets a +2 proficiency bonus to key abilities anyway. So even if you have a penalty, you often end up with either a wash or even a +1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fine.
So anyway, playing one's stats. As Saxius has already said with his example, having a low stat to me is an opportunity, and I really do get frustrated when people try and make arguments about not having to play your stats out. And the usual one that's pulled out is I'm not really big and strong in real life, and I'm it's that one where people say if you're not very charismatic, best way to explain it. I'm going around in circles, making people play out charisma or intelligence on a character, but not necessarily playing out the strength. There's that people always harp on. There's an imbalance that people who play strong characters can just rely on the dice, whereas role playing tends to be required a little more for intelligent. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe it is a valid argument, Elfbait. And the reason being is let me come back. Let me formulate my argument. Let the rest.
All right, go on. Floor is yours.
Are you talking to me?
No, to Geek.
No,
Right. In a game where so much hinges on combat and physical skills, I think it's absolutely fine to abstract all of that. And you can make it flavorful with role play and what have you. And a good DM, if somebody makes it flavorful, will through role playing interesting aspects based on physical stats. You can give bonuses and penalties. There is still that that possibility there. And I'm going to argue now that D&D at its core was originally designed to be a game for people who had above average intelligence. It may not be necessarily designed that way nowadays, but certainly when it first came out, it was expected that the typical D&D player would be somebody who was a bit of a nerd. So playing an intelligent character or playing an unintelligent character, it was expected that most people could play intelligent characters. Okay, charismatic characters might be another side entirely, but I let people describe let people use their imagination, and I'm probably going around in circles and not making a lot of sense, but I hope my point is coming across.
Your point is coming across, and I do understand. I'm just going to try and reiterate it, jump in where possible. So the idea is that, the average player is going to be intelligent. They're going to be able to at least articulate what it is that they are trying to do.
Yes, that's what I mean. Articulate, yes, good word.
Yeah, right. I'm going to be on the other aisle here because I don't think that I don't subscribe to that, but that's purely because. But before I jump in there, but like that's what you want to go for. Yeah. Like they can articulate themselves. They don't rely on these for the die to be rolling for it, and that's the stat in itself. It's more of a side mechanic, whereas the real thing is really down for the player to be taking charge for that, to be bringing that into life. Is that the right spiel? Or
yes.
All right.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that it's clear, because what you're also going to then have is that you're going to have players who are either new, inexperienced, or who are who just are not smart. Just to put it plainly, they're not the smart individuals, or sometimes they have chosen to play a character that is smarter than they are. And at that point, I think that as the DM, it's worth looking at what the characters and who the player are and separating out the two. And then you, at least this is what I do as a DM. If someone is playing someone who is of a more academic field, stepping in and then say, like, well, your character is doing this, and this. You're a wizard, you're a mage. You would know these basic things like mathematics, like these sort of things. So you can do this and this via, either by a hand wave or just give them some of these answers, or you can say, right, now we're gonna make a couple of intelligence rolls to see whether your character knows a few things about these basic things, because not all players are going to go out and say, you know what, I'm gonna read up on architecture and why we need an archstone and why we need this. What's the interest for calculating this? Or some people just decide, I don't need math in my life. I don't need to be able to calculate the cube of an area, or how we use a pi and all of these other things to do various form of calculations. Well, now they are supposed to be playing a character who's got these basic forms of knowledge, and they as individuals don't. At that point, what do you do to close the gap? If they're playing a character with 15, 16 intelligence, they're supposed to be relatively smart cookies, but they themselves have got a very clear gap in knowledge. Now there's a clear discrepancy between the player and the character. And you as the DM, you should be stepping in at that point and going like, okay, well, let's bridge that. That's the point of the aisle that I'm coming from.
Generally, the classes that lean towards higher intelligence and wisdom tend to be among the more complicated classes.
Yeah, and what's to stop a player who doesn't have that knowledge, that's real life knowledge?
Well, you said about new players.
Okay, fine. Take that
I
outside.
mean, I will most often recommend if a new player comes in, then and they get something that's suitable for playing a fighter type character.
Yeah, but
then you encourage them to play that sort of character as their first character, as they're learning how the game works and what's expected, and then maybe they can develop from there.
What you are working on the assumption on is that they have one stats for playing the fighter, but two, let's work on the opposite side. They've rolled the 3d6. Their character is lined for being a cleric or a wizard. And they say, you know what, I'm just going to go for that. It's what we need. We need to do something. Oh, it sounds like fun. But they have no prior experience. They've got no knowledge. And now that's coming in there. Well, at that point, you're facing with the same situation. Now, this is a big, if which, an experienced DM would do, as you say, try and steer them towards what would be a better introductionary way. But there's still going to be the possibility, and I have seen them, I don't know if you have, where the player says, well, I am going to play this because I want to try it now. And then they end up being in a situation where the character that they have in their sheet is supposed to be more intelligent than them.
You make, part of the role of a DM is to make those expectations clear from the start about what is expected from the players in terms of the way the characters are played. Okay. If a brand new player rolls stats that are applicable to be a wizard, there's nothing to say they don't have to be a wizard, but they might, they might choose to be a wizard.
Yeah.
It's the job of the DM to sit with that player and explain how wizards work, but generally how wizards really have to approach the world in order to survive. They've got to be played with a considerable degree of forethought, imagination, planning. And if the player accepts that, then fine. But then the player needs to pretty much play that way, or the character dies. It's Darwin.
Well, that's on the player. I think you're right. I think you should outline the expectation or the typical life of the wizard, especially in an AD&D game or D&D. But beyond that, I'm not telling my player how to play. I'm like, this is how it works. I want to rewind back to the previous topic where you're talking about playing the stats. The way I solved it over the years, I've found that the only problem arises with intellect and wisdom. Every other stat has almost pure mechanical application, so you don't even have to think about it. The strength is reflected in combat rolls or abilities. Charisma is the same, right? I don't care if the player who's playing a highly charismatic character has it's a bit of a dud themselves socially. The dice are going to determine how the NPCs react, no matter how that player's acting. Do
you give bonuses or penalties based on how they present themselves in terms of interacting with?
No, I justify the role. People react in the strangest of ways. So somebody who is acting genuinely charming and who has that charisma in real life, but their character has a penalty, it's like, all right, well, maybe they just rubbed the character the wrong way. So, there's an influence in what they say and how they do in terms of, like, if they're hostile, obviously, somebody's not going to like them. But I justify the role and the response. Somebody could be trying to intimidate a big bad, and the big bad gets a positive reaction roll. And it's like, I like your moxie. I'm still going to chain you up, but I like your moxie, right? So you don't control with your charisma. But the point is that charisma does have mechanical applications. The trick does come with intelligence and wisdom, because you get a person who is not who is a high school dropout, but he's playing a medical doctor. there's obviously a large gap in the knowledge there. And as DM, part of it is, yes, you help them out as much as you can. Like, I'm not a medical doctor. I wouldn't know. I probably know, less than somebody else. So, but as a DM, when I see a character playing an 18 intellect, they've got an 18 intellect on their character. And, who of us has that level that's Mensa level, electricity coming from the brain, genius level. And so you can apply practical solutions like, all right, well, if it's a tight situation where there's no time, they have their brain processes so fast they can ask, say, 5 or 6 more questions than anybody else to get more information. Or, if it's a role-playing situation, you can give them hints, you can give them information freely that their character picks up. Oh, so you notice this, this guy's wearing a gold cufflink, the villain was wearing a gold, or whatever, you know what I mean? You can volunteer certain bits of information to help out that character with the high intellect, because the character will be seeing things or processing things that the player might not be able to. I think that's sort of the way to go with that. So the only two concerns come with intellect and wisdom, because that's where the biggest disparities will often happen.
That is true. Yes, that is true. Yes.
And the key thing the key thing is delineating what intellect versus wisdom are. And I get into this argument all the time. Like, one of my players, he thinks there shouldn't be a wisdom stat. It's just intelligence. I'm like, well, sure, if you want, but I've met smart people who have no common sense, and vice versa. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm
like
saying
the
now,
delineation.
I'm saying that I have an IQ that could have got me in Mensa. That's been tested. But I'm also the sort of person who will forget my wife's birthday, will say the most stupid things in front of the wrong people at exactly the wrong time. My short-term memory can be terrible. And I would, if I was statting myself out for a D&D character, I'd put myself as an intelligence of 15 or 16 and the wisdom of about 5. Because
I wouldn't go that low for wisdom, but that illustrates the point. It's you can have the absent-minded genius, or the opposite. I always use Forrest Gump as the perfect example of a low intellect but high wisdom character. This is a man with a great deal of common sense. He just doesn't have the processing brain power. But that is self is interesting. Like when he put it that way to players, like, oh, I get it. Okay, yeah. So you take things in straightforward. You have a great deal of common sense, and so that's what I'll say. Wisdom or intellect is what you know. Wisdom is how you apply it.
Yeah,
right.
It's life.
And Elfbait makes a good point here that early D&D is flawed in a way by not having mechanical systems in place for the use of wisdom and int in quite the same way as all the others. Yeah, that is. Yeah, you're right. He's right. Yeah. And
there are some.
That's what you were saying, I think.
Yeah, there are some, but they're very class specific. Obviously, Wizard has their chance to know spells and learn spells, but that's very specific to one class. But they've got nothing else for anybody else. I use a basic metric when applying intelligence or intellect-based skills. I have people roll 3d6. Right? It's like, all right, so. Go ahead. Give me an intellect check. 3d6 if it's fairly easy, 4d6 if it's hard, 5d6 or 6d6 if it's really difficult. But we are our wizard in one group with an intellect of 18. He's always making those intellect checks, and it's like that also solves that problem by giving a mechanical option.
That's what DMs have been doing in the OSE game. Gene made us make 5d6 intelligence checks on Saturday. And my dwarf has an intelligence of 7. I had to roll 7 or less on 5d6. It didn't happen. I rolled about 22 or something like that. But yeah, that's.
But it is a good metric to alleviate that. Like, okay, here, what is your intellect? Okay, give me an intellect check, and then that, as a DM, you can control the information you give to the player. So it's not a gimme, but it does allow them to use that stat.
Right. I think we all agree that role-playing stats it's an opportunity. It is. I like the 4d6 rearrange method, but and I do like arranging my stats in a manner that suits the character I pick. But I like to look at what I've rolled and think of the opportunities I can get from them. And I like to see a nice mixture. I mean, I would much rather play a character with 7, 8, 12, 13, 16, 17 as stats than a character with all 15s. Because that 7 and 8 to me adds the flavor. And I like having a nice spread, a couple of average ones, a couple of low ones, and a couple of high ones. And then I try and think of something to make them all work together. But I like to see what the dice give me in that sense. If I roll a 5, where do I put it? Okay, where should I put it? Shall I put it on charisma and be the sort of character that burps in all the barmaids' faces and swears at everybody? Am I feeling like playing that character right now?
Congratulations. 5 charisma means you have to be an assassin.
Well, in AD&D, yes. Any other game, though, yeah. I'd have to be an assassin, yeah. Or shall I put it on wisdom? I mean, I did that with one of my thieves, and he was very intelligent. He was very good at finding traps. But the way he used to demonstrate to the rest of the party that he believed he successfully disarmed a trap was he would go and stand on it and say, look what I've done. It's safe now.
Well, that is the ultimate proof.
It is.
Like, end of the day, like, I've done it good, or I have disabled it by ending myself. So, end of the day, like, it is really, like, it's like, sorry about that. It's one of those tradesmen who they build what's it called, like a shelf, and then they crawl into it to prove to you it is that good. I am now hanging from the shelf, as an example. But I am also picturing your thief being the one going like, okay, we now apply the poison, we swirl it around, and now we wait.
Yeah, he'd be that sort. Yes. We got in a big lift to go down into this abyss. And he was like, "Oh, this is really exciting! I'm getting really excited by this." And he was jigging about, making the lift swing from side to side as they were going down into the abyss. The other captain's like, "No, stop it!" And he was like, I'm sorry, why?" It's just impetuous.
There certainly are things that are really enjoyable when the stats are being played, though it's also down for the player to then know, how many negatives. Yeah, how far to push it, but also, not to focus too much on the negatives only. Because I know I did that in one campaign where my courageous dwarf would always lead from the front as the cleric, which quickly became a problem because we had a otherwise rather, meaty fighter that would come with us, who would always be like a third from the front, because I was always with such bravado, pushing myself forward, that I figured, like, I'm going to be in the front all the time. So rather than playing to the strength of the party.
Right. So I do want to divert conversation a little bit now, and I think what Squirrel Hermit has said here actually leads quite nicely onto the next part I wanted to discuss, and that is other stats.
Yeah.
Systems which have different numbers of stats. There are systems that have got 3 stats. There were systems. I mean, remember second edition when it went bonkers towards the end, and it split all the stats into pairs. You effectively had, was it 12 stats?
Yeah.
You've got 7 stats in MERP, 7 stats in Marvel superheroes. Is D&D's stat balance optimal, or are there other systems that you like? Anything you'd add to D&D, or will you take it away? I mean,
comeliness.
No.
I do like perception, though. That is a stat that does at least lean in towards, you can be experienced or world have your wisdom, but then the actual perception can then be separated out. Or I've heard some DMs say that they will add intelligence and wisdom and then divide it by 2 to then give you the new stat of perception, so that you've then got that rather than it being just wisdom. But equally so, I mean, Geek or John, you've been playing in Shadow of the Demon Lord,
Yes.
which is it's based around the D&D system. You've got some core stats, but they just broke it down. You've got your strength, you've got your agility, you've got your will, and you've got your intellect. It's just 4 bare stats.
Yeah,
that's all that they really needed, and they encompass everything that you really do when everything is broken down. And there are sub bits to it, like perception and your health and every regeneration and everything from there. But that's there. It's down for like what the system is trying to bring in. D&D is often used as the bread and butter. It is the staple. It's what everyone uses to compare things to. The question is just, when you deviate away from that, well, why do you deviate away from it? What's the point? Not as in the point like why do you do it? It's like, what's the purpose? What's the implement? What's the impact to the game that you want? Yes, I'll start
with Shadow and the Demon Lord, though, you've got those core stats, but then you've got sort of sub stats, haven't you? And I quite like that in the sense that there are rolls to be made on the core stats, but there are also, when it pertains to it, rolls to be made on the sub stats, which are derived from the core stats.
Yeah.
And so you can play with you can play pretty much the whole game with the general stats, most of it, 95% of it.
Yeah.
But those little substats come in as and when the DM sees fit.
Exactly.
And that works.
Yeah. But I think a big part of it is, as being pointed out, eyesight, hearing, voices, it's different attributes. But it's because, like using Handmaster here, they're going for something very different.
Yes.
It's not it's not D&D at that point. That's the key thing to really separate out. It's a very different aspect to it. I mean, I think I have to pull one of the books away from here now, but I know Warhammer 40,000, the role-playing games there by Fantasy Flight, they've got like, I think it's like 8 different stats as the core, and they've got various impacts for everything. Anywhere from your ability to swing a sword, that's a core stat. Your ability to shoot a gun, that's a core stat, because of how the universe works. And then it suddenly goes on and on.
So Mar Hawkman's asked this question: what do you think of the idea of starting with 11 in all stats and rolling to modify that?
All right. So plus,
I don't mind as long as the stats can go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would find having a minimum of 11 in every stat to be, if 11 is seen to be an average, I would see having a minimum of 11 to be very boring indeed. I like having a low stat. I like having a 5 or a 6. I like having a 7. I like having maybe a couple of 8s or something like that. I like to have something I can get my role-playing teeth into.
Yeah.
So as long as the stats can go down, it's fine. But if 11 is the baseline to build up from, it's horrible.
As a concept, I think we're all agreeing that yes, give us variety for it, up, down, left, right. Just as long as we have then some opportunities. So if you roll, for example, like 5d6, and then those are the white die, then you have to roll 3 or 4d6 of the black die, and then those are the numbers you have to work with. You can put all of them up, and then you have to put all of them down. It's then depending on how you want to go about it. But
Mark Holtman says he's posted this in Discord. I don't have Discord open when I'm doing this, so I will have to look up more details on it later on. One stat system I liked was the phase rip stats from Marvel superheroes: fighting, agility, strength, endurance, reason, intuition, and psyche. And I like the fact that, because it wasn't a level-based system, fighting sort of replaced your levels. And you had someone like, for example, Captain America had a very high fighting stat, but his strength, intelligence, and endurance weren't as good. So he was a skilled combatant without being overly strong. And having that fighting stat, I thought was quite nice. Something separate to strength and agility, because there's often a little bit of a clash in D&D as to whether you should always have a bonus. I mean, we mentioned it on an OSE on Saturday. You were asking about doing extra damage with a thrown weapon. I'll be playing it from strength.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because
Yeah.
some groups add strength to thrown weapons, some do not.
Yes.
So,
but that's something that is common. That's something that's commonly discussed in D&D because it's logical. But in you've got a separate fighting stat in Marvel superheroes, and then your damage then depends on what you're doing, what your special power is, how far you've charged, what your weapon is, that sort of thing. It's largely based on strength, but that's how that works. And I liked it. I thought it was a very, very smooth system to play because of course it's not level based. So yeah. But also the way the stats worked in that is the top 4 stats defined how much health you've got, and the bottom 3 stats defined how big your karma pool was, and karma were points you could spend to influence rolls. So you could either be it balanced out very nicely. I thought it balanced it. It was good fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Any other systems you can think of?
Oh, I am trying to think here.
yeah, most games I've played historically just have the same variation. I mean, like Palladium has 8, but it's really just the same variation on the core 6 from D&D. They just split 1 or 2 of them. Speed was a skill instead of a flat ability, and
I never played Palladium. Crafting Gamer, there is an issue with this in that the best you can possibly have is 15, and the worst you can have is 0. And then it sort of becomes pointless. Because you go, we'll deduct it from 21 then, and then effectively you're just doing the whole. In fact, if we're old school, we have to like that because we like descending armor class, don't we? And subtracting rolls for that goes. Things like that. Adding a minus doesn't matter, but yeah, it's a bit of an unnecessary effect.
I do like so what are the Sauron games made for their systems, where it's got some pretty basic ones like intelligence, but then they go out and say, look, you've got reflex, then you've got dexterity, you've got body, you've got speed, EMP. I need to look up what some of these stats are, but they change around how they define what your character stats are, and then what they then do is that they say, well, this is then how these are measured out, and you use this as a base. Then you take the base plus your skill plus a D10. So that way, let's say I'm thinking like fighting is using your reflexes, and then you've got your swordsmanship, assuming you're fighting with a sword, for example. So you take your reflexes plus your swordsmanship, you add those 2 together, and then you add a D10 on top of that to then basically show you that you're very quick with your reflexes. You are a skilled or semi-skilled, swordsman. So those 2 combined will at the very least set you down to be somewhere, on a base level, and then it can then be impacted by stats, followed by the variation of the D10 that then changes it around. But that then means that your statistics, your core stats for your character are going to be very much set in the beginning, and improving them with how the game runs means that it's going to be very slow for you to increase your actual stats. It's more going to be your skills that will be anything that changes.
I don't see a problem with it being slow to increase stats.
No,
what about decreasing stats? Does that happen?
That does happen specifically from combat, because you can then have nasty combat wounds where you can lose fingers, arms, in which case it has a huge impact to your character. It also, well, again, the Witcher game here, what it does is that if you as a group, let's just work on the assumption that you've got 4 players, okay? You as a group, you have to sit down, and as players, you have to take yourself out of the game. You have to sit and basically discuss, what do you want? Because all of the classes are going to have a massive impact for what you play. Yes, everyone wants to be the Witcher. Yes, it's a huge and very important, character that you want. But if you do not have a physician, if you do not have a doctor, you are not going to have someone with you that can perform actual surgery, meaning that by the time that your character finished or survived a battle with, I don't know, a ghoul, you might have serious poison within you. And if you don't know how to properly close and treat the wounds, that's going to have an impact. If you have had your eye being clawed at, and it's not being looked, you're not getting any form of treatment, you might not be able to get it healed in a way so that it doesn't affect your eyesight. So that's something makes it very big important. It makes the doctor quite important. Equally so, having a thief, you or a criminal, as they're called, you want to have someone who's got those connections when you come into bigger towns, who is able to then assist you and who's able to fight a bit dirty. What about a bard? Don't you need to be social? Well, of course you want that, but what about when you sell stuff? Now you need the class of a merchant. Buying things, because your goods, your weapons, your armors, it's all going to be damaged. You need a craftsman for that. That is what that system is all set around. As a group, you have to sit down and say, what is our focus going to be? Because we are going to suffer by not having everyone. And that's why it's going to be quite important. The stats for that is then, a separate thing, but that's how that's set up. Is that it gives you at the very least the base of my character is good at X because he's let's say high intelligence. He's very well educated. He's got a doctorate, so he's going to be a fantastic doctor. On that end, we're secure. Now the other things that's going to be focused on is much like if we look at AD&Ds. You've got the core class, but then you've got the proficiencies to sort of buff out the character on the sides.
So the stats create sort of the foundation.
Yes,
and
it does.
I mean, I can actually see a way of doing that. I know Unearthed Arcana had that horrible lots of dice method for creating certain, but I could see merit in, for example, if a player really wants to play a magic user, then you could start, for example, with a certain number of points, not point by as such, but having you roll a pool of dice and you add them to a base level, and that base level where they begin from depends on the class chosen.
Well, the great thing about AD&D is that the core classes are always accessible.
Yes, yeah. And I would only consider this for the core classes. I wouldn't consider this for the specialist classes. But say, for example, every player starts with, they can assign the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the stats, and then they roll a pool of 12d6, and then they can assign those d6 to those starting numbers that they've given their stats.
Well, it seems to me just another method. It's like it's overcomplicating something.
It is overcomplicating, but it's a way of having a foundation of creating a foundation of a class that you want to play, giving a bit of,
But as I was saying, like using the base method, 46 drop the lowest, all core classes are always accessible.
They are, that is true.
So you don't need assistance. Somebody can be a fighter or magic user.
I'm just overcomplicating things. I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, let's look at that horrible method 5. It's only horrible because of the obscene amount of dice you get to roll. But what if method 5 was, okay, you roll your stats, you're rolling 3d6 for your stats, so you're going to be largely average, and then the minimum required, because you got to choose your class first. You have to be human. That's how that works in method 5. Then you choose your class first, then you roll your stats in order, and then you get a boost to the minimums. But that's it.
Yes.
So you're likely going to be just the average. That system can work. Then a player can be the class they want, but they're not likely going to be exceptional.
The biggest problem then is you tend to end up with a party with very few of the core classes in. because you get a lot of players thinking, "Oh, this is my opportunity to be a paladin, to be a cavalier, to be an illusionist, or whatever." And
Great.
okay,
Let them.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But you're rolling the 46 method. You got more versatility because you
true.
can rearrange, and you're likelier to get a higher stat.
Not in every case. Certainly, if you're playing a cavalier, you're going to start with ridiculous stats no matter what.
Well, I don't allow them, so that's out of my game anyway. But anyway, I'm brainstorming. Yeah, but a monk is fine too, because sure, you get all those 15s. The problem there is nobody knows how to play a monk properly. They get themselves killed because they run into combat at the first. I think they're Bruce Lee at first level.
I'm just enjoying Elf's little comment there about how to be an efficient necromancer. That's some good stuff.
Makes at least 3 undead out of each body: bones, flesh, and skin. The problem then is you'd have a jelly zombie, wouldn't you, with no backbone?
What's
and
the problem?
An inflatable zombie, you'd sew up all the skin and inflate it with air, and have an inflatable balloon zombie.
John, I will need to send you some tokens that I made, because I have seen some of these ideas and brilliant.
That inflatable zombie is great for a wizard who travels by boat a lot. He's got a flotation device at all times.
Mm-hmm. Who needs a what do they call again? The Sibilants? Is that what they're called? The big ones that used to have helium in them. I can't remember what they're called. No,
Zeppelins, yeah. Dirigibles, yeah.
Yes, those, yeah. You just have that, but just from recyclables of villages.
Yeah.
Anyway, bring you ideas here.
Yes, absolutely. Back on topic with the stats. Yeah, that's one way of going about it. But then again, the Witcher game is, it's got a different focus on it, and it's very much, you are in a terrible world that you're just gonna have to deal with. And I've just quickly looked up the stats, and they've split up, charisma a little bit, so they call it empathy. You've got a crafting stats, because again, crafting is a core mechanic because your goods are going to be damaged. Will is of course for your magic, but it's also for your intimidation, and luck is because sometimes you really just need luck in your life. And then everything's from there just breaks down for health and side purposes. But the point being is that that is a system where they do go quite different, but they keep it in a sort of core bit to then build upon within the latter. What else do I have? No, I've got a lot of D20 variations, which seems to be quite often the thing. I've also got a book for Savage Worlds, if everyone here is familiar with that.
I'm not. No, I've not played Savage Worlds.
Okay. The core idea is basically your stat is a die, and then
yes, I have. Yes, Deadlands. I played Deadlands.
Yes,
Deadlands and Savage Worlds. Yes, I did. Yeah, I played it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you then have that where basically your stat is sort of like preset. I can't remember what they exactly are, but then rather than having a actual statistic, it's now a die that it increases. So what you then see is that you can then have, if you have a really small die, you have a high chance of having an exploding die. So having a D4, oh, but I have a higher chance of hitting a 4, then I can hit another 4, and so on and so on. And I mean, the probability, it just goes bonkers with that. But having a higher die means that, yeah, we'll get it there.
We're getting there, Nutty. That's coming.
Yeah, but eventually you sort of go up until you hit the D20, and then you're not going to get any higher than that, and you that's sort of like the end for that. But that's another system where it's very different, but that relies on both die as well as cards when it comes to everything, because you don't do initiative by your dice or by your stat. It's done by who draws the highest card or the lowest card. I can't remember which way it goes, and then that's how you then deal it from there. Well, it's a very versatile system that allows you to do.
I did quite like it. I mean, I like the fact that you've got that. You were rolling different dice for your various skills depending on what your stats were. Even though it didn't have the randomness of character creation at the start, it had enough randomness and flexibility in play, so it made the game quite unpredictable.
It did, and they also have a lot of really good things like setting books. Like I have here one that's called Broken Earth, which has got some really interesting mechanics for how you can have one play something that's a bit different, but also how you can then do settlement building and how you start a community, how you go scavenging and all of these things, which is then all tied back into. It's a very simple system, but because it's simple, you can then branch out from it.
Yeah.
And I forget what the system, I think it's Apocalypse World, where it is just a bunch of D6s and a D20. That's all you need. And it's like 3 or 4 core stats. Everything else is just make it up as we go along. Skills, everything was just you make it up. Stars without number, worlds without number. That seemed to mean has very much built their entire infrastructure around that system in itself. Really basic, but it allows for so much for you to go by, because it's having a skeleton. Go on.
I've put this comment on. I'd like you both to read this, and then I've got a quick question to you afterwards. Tell me when you read it.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
So how many of you on your first glimpse through thought that that said fornication?
Oh yeah, I had to read it twice. But I
Sorry, that was the question.
I knew.
You mean it doesn't?
I mean, who am I to argue when Myconids and the sudden urge just appears?
They're one of my favorite creatures in all our role-playing games, Myconids. I think they're wonderful. I think they are so much fun.
They are certainly interesting.
So
anyway, we need to talk about the pink elephant in the room.
What's that?
Call of Cthulhu.
I'm coming to that. I mean, Elf Bates made a good point here as well. When you shift the dice, different types of dice, it's when you've got characters affected by injury, it's very good. I mean, if you've got a character who's a D6 on all I don't know, agility based skills, and he suddenly gets maimed, it's very, very easy just to go, right, all those skills are now a D4.
D4, yeah. Well, that's a big thing in DCC. I'm playing in a DCC game, and the DM's always saying, "Oh, well, you're not proficient with this weapon, so roll a D16 instead of a D20." It's like,
yes,
okay,
that's quite good. Yeah, but DCC is quite good fun like that. And I have to say, I do like DCC. Would I buy it? Would I run a game of it? Probably not. If somebody offered to run me through a game, yeah, I would.
And yet I bought the damn thing.
You bought it. Well, run a game of it. I would quite happily play it.
I heard so many good things of it. I got the book. I started reading. I read some more. And I just went, no.
Yeah.
No. Just no. What is this? No.
It's bonkers.
Just back in the shelf you go.
Who's is that you? Are they after you, Sean?
Yeah, they're after me.
It's all that illegal magic that you have.
No, it's my high charisma. I'm on fire, so the fire department's on its way.
And I'm just going to add a fourth person to the stream. Hello there.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
You shan't see me. I'm doing my Sean impersonation tonight. No camera.
Have you just joined us, or have you been listening to what we've been saying?
I listened a little bit at the start while I was working because, that's the kind of job I have. And then I just listened to the DCC bit and was like, oh, I have to get in on this treat.
Well, as you may have worked out here, Sax just doesn't like DCC. And
I'm with you, brother.
You don't like it.
Can't stand it.
My impression isn't as harsh as that. I'm playing in a game of it. I think it's okay, but I would never want to run it.
I don't see any of the benefits over regular D&D. That's my problem with DCC. There's some neat ideas in it, but I've seen those ideas in other places. Spell failure, things like that.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment.
I hate any game almost on principle that forces me to go buy specialty dice. Like that just irks me to no end. It's just like, ugh, why do I need your stupid dice? Why can't I just use the ones we've all been using for 30, 50 years, right?
I like my D16 and my D20.
Everybody loves it. I know people that are into it. They love it. I get it, bro. I completely. I'm not judging you. This is my own personal hate. It's not you.
It's not
on you, bro. Look,
me.
I got introduced to DCC when they were 3.5 and 3 modules, right? The Dungeon Crawl Classics series. Yes, One Ring. I don't play that either. But I got introduced to DCC back in the day, and it did the exact same thing I hated about old school gaming, which was every dungeon had a dragon at the end, dragon under glass. It was just like, it was exhausting. It's like every trope that I had outgrown or never bought into is compounded and is the foundation DCC builds itself on. So it's just clearly not for me, and I'm okay with that. There's lots of games that aren't for me. You know what I mean? But just, I will never get why people love it so much.
I like tropes. I'll say that now.
No tropes, but those ones are exhausted. Come on.
If every module is the same, yeah, I would get that. I mean, but the core book is the core book. I find there's too many charts. It's like we're playing last night, and the DM's okay. I got to look up this chart. Oh, I roll this. Okay, I got to go over this chart. Oh, you rolled it. I got to back to this chart. Oh, just go.
I mean, charts can't be the problem for you, can they? Really, because you're running against the Dark Master, which is based on MERP and Rollmaster, which is absolutely stuffed with charts.
Charts are fine. Too many charts.
Okay, so it's the old. You ever play Aftermath? You guys ever even read Aftermath? No. That is a game where everything's a chart. Like we used to make the joke of, okay, I'm going to stand up. Well, hang on, let's roll to see if there was an earthquake somewhere in the area, and those vibrations cause you to force a dex check. But wait, the wind's blowing, so let's roll to see which way the wind's going. You know, it was that level of chartness. Yeah, that's what I agree with Sean on. That's too much chart. VSD, you roll an attack, you roll a critical if you get one. That's it. That's all. 2 charts, move on with your life. You know what I mean?
So, Bear, the general topic of the thread, though, is role-playing your stats.
Yes.
What's your general opinion on role-playing your stats? How do you see low stats as an opportunity? Are they a pain in the ass? Do you like your players to lean into thinking of a good reason for a stat to be very high or very low? What's your general opinion on that?
Well, I'm not a fan of rolling stats. I know it's sacrilege. Well, how dare I? What was I thinking?
Where's the mute button?
How dare you, sir? Where's my glove to slap your face?
I've dropped my gauntlet before you. Will you pick it up? Yes or no? But when I was running 5e, I hit upon a pattern that I really liked, which was I gave them an array. They got 118, 116, 114, 112, 110, and 18. And they were not allowed to put the 8 in anything that they got a bonus to. They had to start play with one of their stats at 8. And as a result, some really interesting characters who had clear strengths and clear flaws came out of it. So the strength guy was the best he was at strength, but he kind of sucked at intelligence and was a dumb brute, right? The charisma guy was the best there was at charisma, but he was a bit sickly because his con gave him a penalty to everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was fun that way for us. I know some people don't like that.
I have with that. Problem I have with that is it the way 5e tends to run.
Yeah,
you would have from what I've seen from my experience, classes that don't use strength will drop the 8 on strength.
Okay.
And fighter types are just going to drop the 8 on intelligence.
It's going to come down to players. It's going to come down to the kind of players you have. Now, one of the things I cannot stand is when someone tells me a way to game the house rule, right? So, for example, when we talked about experience, I said my whole thing was I just give levels by surviving sessions. You need to survive as many sessions as the next level you're going up to. And someone said to me, well, what if they just hide in the tavern for 5 sessions? Well, they're not playing the game and they can get the fuck out of my table. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And if the person is going to just sit there and min-max what I just gave them as an array, and they can't justify to me why they're always min-maxing that array, I'm going to say, look, change it up or find another game. It's as simple as that. I don't play with min-maxers. I don't play with people who's trying to strategize the system. I play with people who make characters, and then if they can then take that character into the system and strategize the system afterwards, God bless them. Have fun. Fill your boots.
So the priority is on making the character first.
Absolutely.
Okay. I can get with that. Though with your array you've got there, I would change the 8 and the 10 to a 7 and a 9.
Yeah, sure, you can do that if you like.
Because I like a bit more variation. 8 isn't low enough for me.
Here's your 7 and your cane. Good luck.
Maybe it'd be fun to go to a 5th ed player and tell them, okay, we're standard array, but you got to roll randomly to see where each stat goes.
Ooh.
Roll a d6 to see where your 15 goes. Roll now a d5 to see where your 14 goes.
I can see a number of players being down for that.
Yeah, that's actually neat. If you don't have an idea going in for your character, that's a really neat idea. I like that.
That's quite good, yeah.
One method I once saw, and I could see people using this, is you get playing cards. You get 18 playing cards, and they're all numbered between 2 and 6. And it's something like 3 2s, 3 6s, 3. Yeah, it's 3 of each. 3 of each one. Or was it 2 2? I can't remember the exact way it was spread out. But then people you do it in order, and you deal out the playing cards for your stats. Therefore, everyone's stats always add up to exactly the same amount. No. But you can still have stats down as low as 6. You can still have stats up as high as 18. And it's completely random where they come out, and everyone's all add up to the same amount. But they're still all over the place. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all.
Well, that's actually neat. I like that idea. The one I got turned on to recently for randomly rolling, which I'm sure I'll get shrieks from you guys on, was 24d6. Roll them, drop the 3 lowest and the 2 highest, and now group the rest together in 3s and see what you get out of that.
All right. Yeah.
And it actually comes out really nice, and you get a really good, diverse set of numbers at the end. If you want to be a complete prick about it as a DM, you can say, and now group them from top to bottom in groups of 3. And then you'll really screw them over, and they'll wind up with a 4. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. No, but that makes sense, because I've seen something similar being done where a group had to basically go, okay, we're now rolling like 46, but each result is then put into a pool, and then the group then had to say like, okay, well, who needs what stat? And then they had to barter with one another about, who was allowed to get what stat, and then how they had to then sort of divvy it out. That was a different way that they were doing it.
Yeah, it works. I mean, however you get to the character at the end of the day, if you don't have an idea, do something random. If you do have an idea, present your idea to the DM. Any way you slice it, once the dice hit the table and you start playing, play that character. If he's got a charisma of 4, don't try and be charming. Or, ironically, try to be charming. Yes. And completely stumble all over yourself all the time,
It's the least charming people who think they're the most charming often. So
my neutral evil necromancer would take control in every conversation, every important meeting, because he was in charge and he'd always put his foot in it. Always do it.
I've had a player who unironically thought he was the star of the show, and that all the other role players were beneath him, when of course the opposite was the truth. He was the worst. Not a bad human being, but he didn't understand character work and role play, whereas he was playing with professional actors in the group who did, and yet he thought he was a cut above them.
Yeah, anyway, but professional actors too, and they bring their own baggage to the games.
Yeah, true, but they know how to play the role as opposed
that
to...
I will give you. Yes, sometimes they bury themselves in the role, though.
Mm-hmm. That can be fun too.
I don't think I've ever met a professional actor in the flesh.
Well, not in the flesh, but you've met one here on the thing.
Yeah, I know there's a couple on here now.
Yeah,
People, there's two of you who have done that sort of thing.
I got like an IMDb page and everything. It's insane.
As do I. Yes.
Ooh, let's get together to have a Canadian actor party. You and me, man.
The actor's on strike, and then I can give them the finger anyway. So
exactly. Sorry. Back to D&D and gaming.
Anyway, I'm going to divert to Call of Cthulhu because I think we've disappointed General Nut by not mentioning Call of Cthulhu so far. I mean, and people who had got a sweepstake on how long it would take me to mention Call of Cthulhu on one of my streams, and the answer to that sweepstake is 99 minutes, which is probably the longest it's ever been.
How is it every time I show up, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we're talking about Call of Cthulhu again? Like every time I show up, you do this. Do I inspire you or something?
Because it's the will of Cthulhu, Bear.
I'm thinking
you are being drawn into it.
Narlethia, please.
I'm thinking it is because General Nut mentioned Call of Cthulhu. That's the reason why you turned up.
Fine.
Yeah. Anyhow, Call of Cthulhu, obviously, it has more stats than your D&D, but all the stats have a lot of meaning in the game. And the way the game system works, you do have quite a lot of stat rolls during play. And one thing I do like about it, one thing I really like about Call of Cthulhu, is there's absolutely no need to pick a profession that suits whatever stats you roll. There's no rules in there that say if you've got 40 education, which is the lowest you can get in 7th edition, that you can't be a university professor. Okay, it's probably a bit daft, but you can be. There's no limitations on it at all. It will affect how your skills pan out, because you'll get 4 times your education in terms of skill points. You won't end up with very many skills, and you'll probably die very quickly. Well, you just die very quickly a lot of the time anyway, or whatever. But I like Call. I like everything. I like everything to do with Call of Cthulhu. I'm biased, but I like the way stats are integrated in it. I like the way stats define your skills, and the best thing is I like the trade-off you get with some of the stats. How often you'll see in adventures where there's certain places that people with you get more hit points if you get a high size stat, but you can't crawl into that sewer pipe. Or you get more skill points if you've got a high intelligence stat, but wait until you fail a sanity check. That high intelligence is going to absolutely wreck you. And having that sort of trade-off, that risk and reward, I think it's wonderful.
I have no opinion on this, to be honest, because I'm just not enough of a Cthulhu player or DM. GM. Keeper. That's it. Keeper.
Yeah, well, we get you. No, it's I do like Call of Cthulhu for what it brings on. It's certainly different, but I think this is also echoing a point that was made earlier. It's like, it's going to have a very big impact for what the tone is of the game. Mm-hmm. The mechanics, the impacts, everything that it has from there.
Yeah. Where is it up here? Andy Houston said skill rolls, aren't they, rather than stats? They're stat rolls as well. I'll call for quite a lot of intelligence checks or power checks or agility, dexterity checks. And those are stat rolls. But they also help define various skills that you have. Your dexterity helps define your dodge skill. Your combination of constitution and size helps define your hit points. You get a damage bonus based on size and strength. Your sanity is taken from your power skill, and so on. So there's a risk and reward with a lot of these, and a lot of thought to be put into it all. And I will say, you get the impression that everyone dies in Call of Cthulhu. It depends. In one-shots, yes, because they're usually more deadly. In campaigns, not so much, because they tend to be more sensibly written.
I always laugh, and the same people who will cry that Call of Cthulhu's amazing, you'll die, it's so lethal, it's awful, are the same ones who will whine that, oh my god, D&D, old D&D's too hard, you die.
But there's a difference, right, in the way you're going to die, the experience of death, if it's done the right way in Call of Cthulhu. I will admit, the few times I've actually played Call of Cthulhu, I've been blessed by having really good keepers who really knew Cthulhu. They really knew the horror aspect. They knew all that stuff. There was no goofing around. There was no screwing around. When we started screwing around, things got dangerous for us, because he was, one of them was like, I'm going to just put you back on track right now. But when we died, it wasn't just, oh, I only had 4 hit points and now I'm dead. Oh, that's nice. I'm so glad that goblin threw a rock in my head. As opposed to, oh shit, the cultists are around me and I got knives in me. What the hell? Like that. It just feels more fulfilling to die in Call of Duty.
Yes, it feels right. I think that's the best way that you're putting it better. It's just, it feels right that you're dying in this, because it's in line with this setting. It's in line with the expectations for some weird reason.
You need to set new expectations for D&D then.
I'm going to say now, I think Sean's first ever game of Call of Cthulhu, Sean's character died in one of the most fulfilling ways. I thought that was wonderful.
The epilogue after the villain had been vanquished.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know it. How did he die? Can you please tell me? I'd like to know.
You got to go watch the videos.
No. I'm the asshole who goes to Wikipedia and looks for the plot synopsis. Come on.
He had basically lost 20 points of sanity in a single roll.
Oh.
I was down, I think, 1 point. Yeah.
Yeah. And when the infernal bugs that had infested his character started eating him from the inside out, he was just screaming and howling with laughter on the car park of a diner, wasn't it, or a bar or something, rolling around as your body split while being consumed from the inside by these bugs. Something like that, wasn't it? I seem to remember.
Yes, the paramedics, I think they zapped me too hard and caused the damage that caused
they did, yes.
Spiders.
Yeah, weren't you tasered or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grumpy was forget-me-not.
Yeah. Oh, because you went mad, didn't you? You basically went mad because of your
the condition. Yeah. Well, the condition you're in. I was just whiffing those sanity rolls, so the sanity plummeted. So it was hysterical.
And it was the car park of a diner or pub or something, and he got zapped by something or other, which caused him to split, and all the bugs came spilling out and consumed him from it was.
But from a story perspective, it was a good coda, because the story had been resolved. It was over. Like, the game was done. And it was just like, okay, well, let's see if you get cured. Nope.
Now, but hang on. But think about that. Think about the story you guys just told about this experience you shared and you ran through together versus, so I played D&D. Yeah. And then I got shot with an arrow. Yeah. And I died.
Yeah. But you see, we get the same stories out of D&D.
Not as often.
Oh, all the time. Well,
not if you're playing hardcore old school style. Rare.
I play pretty hardcore old school. You said it earlier. The expectation is there. If the expectation is, you're going to survive and have an epic story, that means you have to survive to see the end of the epic story. Whereas if the expectation is, okay, we're adventurers and we're exploring things and death is around every corner, it's not about the story that has been planned, it's about what happens, then the same things can happen.
There's another way, sir. This is the thing. I get so tired of this debate of this black and white setting on this. There is a middle way. There is the Siddhartha path you can take, where it can be deadly and things can happen, but there's a certain amount of plot armor that can be put in as well, and the story can unfold, and certain characters can die, and certain characters might not die. But this thing that drives me insane about the OSR NSR argument is that it's a binary. It's on or off. off. And I don't agree with that. I just never agree with that because we didn't play like that back in the 80s either. Yes, I had a ranger who died in the first session because a giant spider dropped out of a tree on my head and bit me and I failed my poison save. C'est la vie. That's life. I get it. But I also had other characters that survived. The only reason that exactly. Ranger story is funny is because my next character wore a helmet with a point on top of it. Why not? I was 15, like, Jesus,
And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
I think on this note, I am going to have to head to bed. Because it's pumpkin hour for me, and I need my beauty sleep.
We didn't break you by going way off topic, no.
I remember I need to be beautiful, and that's the best way.
Well, we've been on topic for 110 minutes of stream, pretty much.
I'm very.
And then I showed up and screwed everything up the way I do. So
gold stars all around for all the hard efforts.
All right. Well, we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, Sax. It's nice to have you on stream again.
Yeah, nice.
So, Bear, to offer a counterpoint, yes, I agree there are different ways to play. It's just not, to me, the preferred way.
That's fine.
I like the open. Like, I don't prep my games with a story in mind. I have no idea what's going to happen. I let the players take the wheel and we see what happens. And that's where the fun for them is, because they know I'm not going to push them through a plot. They know I'm not going to save their butts. They get themselves into a situation. I describe the situation. They get themselves out. And when the dice let them get out, and we had a situation. I don't know if you follow my recaps. There's a character who's become popular with the audience, Bumblestump. And he got snagged by a constrictor snake, and it was squeezing the life out of him. And spoiler alert, he managed to scramble away with a lucky die roll with 1 hit point left. And they were talking about that. And in this case, he happened to survive, which is is good. But it was a tense situation because it was entirely the players who put themselves into it. I didn't say you have to go on this mission. This is the story. So you can have those moments. Those moments are equally good. I don't think Cthulhu or any other system is any more or less. It's the expectation. It's the perception of how the games should be played that colors the experience, I think. So,
well, I agree with you on that, and I'm not disagreeing with your anything you're saying here. But I am going to say I've had similar experiences in plot-driven games, because the way I do my games in plot, as I've said many times, is I have the idea of the plot points I want to hit, but the map is not one line. The players will get us to those plot points with the choices of the directions they go and what they do. So we still get a bit of that. We still have some of that fun stuff as well. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be, you appreciate what you appreciate, you play what you play, and you enjoy what you enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't believe in there being a one true way.
Oh, yeah, I never said there was.
No, I know you never said that. I'm not accusing you. Notice I didn't say I don't agree with Sean said there was a one true way. And for me, the big problem is that sadly there are too many out there who do say there is a one true way, and they make me want to fucking scream, because I'm just so tired of this I'm right, you're wrong bullshit we go through in our hobby. It's obnoxious. It's exhausting. That said, ladies and gentlemen, if there's ever a cool role-playing convention in Toronto, I'll come up and you can watch Sean and I wrestle each other at a table over who's right. It'll be fun.
Oh, do we get to make bets?
I got a better plan. I'll run a game. I'll run a game. You run a game. We'll play in each other's games, and we'll compare notes for fun.
Or we'll just play in games and have fun. How about that?
I've got visions now of setting up a sumo ring, and having the pair of you opposite each other, ready to slap each other.
Sean, I'm going to be honest. I don't know physically what you're like, but I know what I'm like, and I know what my experience is. I think you might lose, sir.
Quite possibly. Right. Even with the middle-aged spread, I still have spindly arms and legs.
That can be tiresome, trust me.
But I know Bear's a big lad. Yes.
On the topic of thing in Toronto, Dungeon Minister is actually trying to set up a weekend con up in Honeywood.
Where's Honeywood?
It's about 45 minutes to an hour out of Toronto. It's north of Acton.
There's only 3 directions out of Toronto: east, west, and north. So which one is it?
Northwest.
Northwest. Okay.
Um,
I would be highly surprised if I could make it all the way up there for something like that, but never say never.
right. Well, he's doing it well in advance, so people can plan.
Yeah, but that's a 6-hour trip for me, man.
Right. Well, it's one of those come for the weekend kind of deals, right? But
yeah, come for the fish. Come for the freak, stay for the fish. Got it.
It's worth the drive to Acton. Or are you not familiar with those ads?
No, I'm not familiar with those ads. Sorry.
No. You lived in Ontario for a bit, so you may have heard them. But
I lived in Ontario in the early 90s in Belleville when I went to radio broadcasting school at Loyalist. So I don't know shit about Acton other than it's a great name.
It would cost me at least 2 weeks' wages to pay for the flight. So,
but you know what? Sean will put you up at his place.
right.
Well, yeah, I do have a spare bed, so you could you don't have to worry about hotel, but yes, the flight would be the big one.
You book far enough in advance, you'll actually get a good deal on a flight, but it still would cost you thousands.
Yeah,
crossing the Atlantic isn't a cheap event.
Squirrel Con, where all the nuts gather.
Set it up, Squirrel. We'll set it up.
Where's Squirrel located?
I think he's in Ohio. He's near Cincinnati, isn't he?
Yes.
Too far for me, baby.
Do you remember that?
Hey, Squirrel. Piece of trivia about your state, by the way. What are the 2 things Ohio has produced more of than any other state in the union? Let's see if he knows, and we can continue until he puts an answer up.
One thing I do know about where Squirrel lives, you know where that train burnt recently?
The what?
That train that was burning.
That's that's Jesus. Where is that? Oh God, what was the name of that town where they had the big derailment?
That's Squirrel's hometown.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Losing football teams. Well, Kabuki Kid got one of them, presidents. But there's one more that Ohio has produced more of than any other state, apparently. Now, I could be wrong. I could have been lied to by an Ohioan, but she hated the place. So she was from Cleveland, and when she told me the second answer, I'm like, really? Why? She goes, you live in Ohio. You want to get away.
I have no idea. Serial killers. All right.
What did you say? Sorry.
I said serial killers.
Yeah, he said serial killers. No, you still got to go to the Pacific Northwest for serial killer.
That's right. So people basically want to get off the fucking planet.
Yeah, they're like, Ohio is offended and they want to get as far as fucking possible away from Ohio as they can. East Palestine, Ohio. That's it. There you go.
Now that we're done dissing Ohio.
Right. Anyway, should we try and lean back towards the topic? I mean, we're talking about,
yes.
Okay. Other stat systems. Bear, you weren't here when I tried to get people to talk about other stat systems that they liked. Do you have any other game stat systems that you like?
Any other? I think when I first encountered the concept of fighting in Marvel superheroes as a statistic, I fell in love because it immediately removed the idea that how dexterous you were, how strong you were, determined how well you hit. Or how often
I'm getting a sense of deja vu here.
We talked about it earlier. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, the reason why is without going into details, I've had more than a few trainings and fisticuffs in my life, and I promise you, strength and dexterity have as little to do with possible without training. And even innate ability is really good. So having a fighting stat really, really took the onus off of I'm a bruiser, I hit. I'm nimble, I hit. It was fun.
The example I gave for when I was talking about that was Captain America.
Yeah,
he's not particularly strong. He's well above average strength. He's well above average in terms of
remarkable strength. He's the maximum human potential. He can lift 1 ton.
But his fighting stat is amazing.
Yes,
he's got great fighting ability. It's
amazing. Plus, he's got a bunch of talents that are going to bump it up, and he's probably going to be rolling on the unearthly table most of the time.
Yeah. But that's his fighting stat. And that's down to his skill.
But he's still only going to be doing remarkable damage with his punch, unless he's using the shield or something else, right? So that's the beauty.
Or he's charging a long way or something like that.
Well, that's endurance based. So God, get out of the way. Evade that. It's your only hope.
Yes.
But I hate
Yes.
like one of the games I love is Marvel Saga, the card game, and I absolutely hate that the to hit is tied directly to strength, which means if you have a Spider-Man Hulk fight, Hulk is hitting a lot more than he should. If you actually look at Spidey should be getting out of the way all the time. You know what I mean? Non-stop.
Right. Spidey should be
Hulk's-
hitting a lot, but Hulk be hitting hard.
Exactly. When Hulk connects, it should be a devastating knockout blow. But he shouldn't be connecting all the time. So I prefer that. I like that. And I've seen it in a few other games that it's come along, and some people get it and they do it simply, and some people don't get it and they do it super overcomplicated. And as a result of that, it takes away from the elegance of it, in my opinion.
I mean, I did say when I was talking about it, I said the reason the fighting skill really works nicely, it's not a level-based system. So,
No.
and the effect of the fighting stat is baked into the attack tables in D&D, for example, based on character levels. But obviously, Marvel Superheroes is not level based, so it has to be a separate stat in that sense. But you're right; it does. It makes the sort of the martial artist type character less dependent on strength or agility. You've got your skill as well.
It's funny. I like ascending dice statistics, right? Savage Worlds uses it. Cortex Classic used it. And I love it in Cortex Classic, and I absolutely despise it in Savage Worlds.
We were saying early on stream that we quite like Savage Worlds the way
I
did
can't. I love it on paper. I absolutely adore reading it. I think it's a fantastic, brilliant, beautiful game. Every time I've run a game, me and my players just sit around going, why do people like this again? Because we just hate it. We just constantly hate it in play. But I love reading it. I think it's fantastic. I keep backing stuff for it. But
what goes wrong? What about it goes wrong in your sessions?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, it's just the system doesn't click for us. It's just the way it is. I don't know why. It's something about it. And Shane's a friend, and he's a great guy, and Pinnacle's a great company. But I feel bad every time I say I don't like Savage Worlds to play. I love it to read, but not to play. And it's just the way it is. I think it's the extra D6 thing that annoys the crap out of me a little bit. I don't like success dice pools as a general rule, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of them. I like totaling up dice. I always like totaling up dice. I think you should always be totaling. If you're rolling a bunch of dice, how much do they add up to? That's something I'm a big fan of. The only time I've seen success pooled dice that I've liked was in Hollow Earth Expeditions, the ubiquity system where it's binary. Doesn't matter what die it is, odd, even. That's all that matters. So you could roll a handful of D20s, you can roll a handful of D4s, you can mix them up how you like and roll them. All you're looking for is odd, even to determine your successes. So I like that. But I don't know. So Savage Worlds, I love the ascending dice idea. I love the idea that when you get, negatives, you drop your die type down and stuff like that. I think that's really great. But beyond that, I don't know. Other systems that have cool stats that are different. I kind of like Supers. It has a neat system for that. There's a shock for those who know me. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that stands out. What did you guys have? What were some of the ones you discussed?
Oh, well, that's when I brought up Marvel Superheroes.
That was the only one you talked about?
At that point, it pretty much was. We did mention Savage Worlds as well, because we were looking for things that were slightly different. AB Mark II, you are probably about 10 minutes behind, I think. I think your stream might be lagging a little bit. You seem to be commenting on things that we've all said about 10 minutes ago.
Or they just really want you to come to Canada.
Well, I'll tell you what, John. When I win the lottery tonight, I'll fund your ticket to Canada. There you go.
The thing is, I mean, AB lives in the same city as me.
Okay.
He actually has the accent that I used to have before I sort of ironed mine out. Elfbait mentions Galaxy.
Never heard of it.
I haven't either.
Me neither.
No, I don't.
There's probably a reason if he's calling it the worst one.
Yeah, I don't play sci-fi though, so unless it's Paranoia, which has a brilliant stat system. Paranoia.
You will never
just roll D20s, and they really don't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
They really don't matter.
I always
might give
like
you a few skills.
in the origins of the D6 system, Ghostbusters. The ghost die was the 1d6 that had the ghost symbol on it. The ghost in the red, the whatever that term is, the interdiction. And the rule was players just love to bounce those dice. They're always rolling them even when they shouldn't. So if at any point in time one of your players is fucking around with their dice and that ghost die comes up a ghost, immediately do something bad to them. Like just fuck it away. It's like, I love that. That's awesome.
Yes. Slan, going back to Marvel superheroes, Slan mentions Hulk throwing things. Yes. That's the point of Hulk.
Yeah, but what makes Hulk even better than that? That's yes, but I love ground pounds and slaps. When he slaps his hands together and he does the shockwave, that's my favorite shit with bricks, When you got big guys stomping their foot and sending a seismic wave through the ground into the other heroes, that's awesome, Dodge that, bitches.
Nut, when you're playing Orient Express, of course I do. I can't do German. I can't do Austrian. I can't do Turkish. I can't do Scottish. I can't do Russian. But I can do French. But I can do London. I can do posh. I can do Yorkshire and things like that. But in terms of European accents, and when you've got a French conductor on the train called Henri, then you're going to get a French accent all the time.
The quality of the accent is not important. Only the college try.
Exactly. I got so sick of Scottish dwarves and Irish halflings that in my setting, the West, the halflings sound like Canadians, and the dwarves, depends if they're hill or mountain. If they're mountain, they sound like Germans, and if they're hill, they sound Yiddish. It's way more fun.
We had a running gag that all rock gnomes were Austrian. And one guy doing his Arnie impression for the whole time. It was hysterical.
That's awesome.
I tend to play gnomes with quite a high-pitched, irritating voice.
Well, now do it as Arnold Schwarzenegger. That makes it even better. We have to go there. Let's go. Come on.
Get to the mushroom.
Get to the mushrooms. Wow.
Now
make that high pitch, Sean. Come on.
Are you? Get to the mushrooms.
That's awesome. I love it.
It's the first rule of a crisis situation.
I don't know where that accent went then. It almost sounded Liverpudlian towards the end.
Liverpudlian, oh my goodness.
Elfbite says that the universe system has 14 abilities.
Yeah, okay, universe I've heard of. Yes, I've never bought it, but I've heard of it. Okay.
11-page character sheet, 14 ability scores.
I'm not doing that. No way.
No.
In the immortal words
and each one has 10 sub-abilities.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. What do Canadians sound like? First he says Newfies, and bro, Newfoundlanders, please. Newfies is pejorative. Let's be honest.
Well, he's Canadian. He's allowed.
Yeah, he's Canadian, but we're the ones who aren't allowed to call them Newfies. That's the whole point. They get mad at us now. Brunswick? No. I sort of do them as that neutral sort of, oh, yeah, okay. So, well, you got to do the farming, and you got to take care of things there, right? So that's what we're going to do. Like, let's go now. Come on. Like, just that neutral, stupid Canadian accent everybody thinks we have. That we don't.
The Mackenzie brothers. Yeah,
exactly. Like, one fucking part of Ontario has that accent, and now everybody thinks everybody in Canada sounds like that.
Yeah, take off, eh?
Oh, I can't tell the
difference.
difference.
You hoser.
I can't tell the difference between Canadians and Americans when you speak.
Really?
Not for a lot of you.
Listen to the vowels. The easiest way when I was working on set was we had a dialogue coach come over one time for something. She goes, I'm here to teach you how to speak American. I said, so you'd like me to say at and about and up on a roof instead of out and about and up on the roof. She was like, yep, you're good, and walked away. It's that simple.
It's a boot. A boot.
It's not a boot.
A boot.
I'll boot you right in your arse. That's all. My boot will go right up there.
A bit of Scottish. But I say, one thing I do know about American tends to have quite a lot of quite long vowels in
Yeah, and they also say, like, one of the things I love to do is whenever I've had too many times in my life have an American go, "Oh, you're from Canada, eh? Eh?" To which I go, "Yeah, you're from America, huh?" It just shuts them down real fast because they say "huh" the way we say "a."
Hey.
Yeah, I don't know. I got nothing for England, you old geek. You got too many accents in that fucking island.
Yeah. You go 10 miles and you get a different accent. It's insane. It is insane.
It is, and it's mental how many accents you have.
But you're still 10 minutes behind. You have got an accent. I could tell from the moment I spoke to you, AB, that you're a Brummie.
I did a production of Caught in the Net, and every actor was doing a different UK accent, and they're like, "Yep, that tracks. It's set in London."
That's the same mentality when you look at the Cosby Show from the 80s and 90s, where, like, you know, white people are like, "Oh, look at that happy black family," and black friends of mine are going, "How come they're light skins right next to like deep dark people like that? That didn't happen in a family." And I'm like, "Hey, what do you want? It's the way it is." So yeah, so as long as it sort of sounds like this, I think we're all right with it being, "Hey, it's from the UK, lovely." Like, it doesn't matter. First time I heard a Geordie accent, though, I almost shit myself.
Yeah, but also the thing with the Geordie accent, to someone from America, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between Geordie and Sunderland accent, which is a Mackem accent.
He's making up words. You hear that, Sean? He's making up words. These places don't exist.
But Sunderland and Geordie,
he's British. That tracks.
Having shared a house with both Geordies and Mackems, I can say there are differences. There are differences.
Oh, of course there are. But at the end of the day, bro, I mean, you go anywhere in the world where there's enough people and enough distance between them, and by enough distance, I mean 100 feet. They start getting different accents, right? That's just the way.
There's only about 20 miles between Newcastle and Sunderland.
So before Saxious has an aneurysm in his sleep, let's talk about making accents a stat in our games. you roll an accent stat, and you got a list. You got to.
Yeah, like it's well, hang on though. What if, because I'm running into this problem in my campaign, which is, what if you had some way of trying to decide if people can understand each other than I have a language skill? Because I have English as a fucking language skill. And there are people who are English speakers who, when they talk, I just go, it's like that thing in Christ. I love the movie too. And Hot Fuzz. When they go to the farm, and the other guy has to translate for him, then the third guy has to translate it back into basic English. Like, I mean, Christ.
It's just different dialects of the same language.
Yeah, well, and accents. It's not just dialects. There's accents come into it too. Like dialect, like Cockney rhyming is a dialect. You know what I mean? But the Cockney
that's thieves' cant. That's thieves' cant.
It is thieves' cant. It's the origin of thieves' cant, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. What was it? I was going to say, I mean, we talk about this. It's like in our games, like, just how much realism do we want when it comes to languages, right?
That's the topic tonight on my show, by the way. Realism.
I looked it up this time. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Are you showing up tonight? Good.
Yeah, I'm coming tonight.
Nice.
But it's like it comes up. It's like, how come everybody speaks English? It's because in D&D we have a common tongue. It's a trade language, and everybody speaks it so they can communicate. And that's as much as we need to describe it. Now let's play the game.
But that's also a real world.
This is effectively English for most people, because even though it's not the most widely spoken first language in the world, it's the most widely understood language in the world. So it is the common language. In Middle Earth, it's Westron. That's the common tongue.
Well, exactly. And so when I'm doing my world, I'm trying to come up with what the trade language would be. And I'm looking at all these cultures that I have, and I'm like, well, these guys on this side hate those guys, so there's no way they're going to even remotely use. And it just wound up being this mess that I wound up with, that I wound up creating a thing called Midmanish, or Midmani, which is basically a hybrid language of the three primary languages that are of the continent, plus the ancient Latin equivalent, all sort of melanged together. And we just go, that's your trade language that everybody fucking speaks with whatever accent you have. Have fun. Because otherwise it would just not work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I lived in the Northwest Canada side, Elfbait. Y'all have an accent. Trust me. I'm not doing it, but you have an accent. Especially Portland. Oy. Oregon. Oregonians. They have an accent.
The only two American accents I can really pick out are the Deep South and
Which
the New England sort of Bostonian type.
So that's the Southie accent, right? That's what they call that, the Southie accent, the Boston. He had a heart attack. What? He had a heart attack. He had a what? His hat attacked him? No, he had a heart attack. His hat stopped beating. It's a rough accent, but it's a very low class accent, and it's a lot of people believe that it came into existence from Irish immigrants wanting to fuck with the rich people. Just going like, we're just going to talk as hard as we can to make them not understand us all the time so we can talk about them right in front of their faces. There's a fantastic accent in the New England area, Maine. If you ever get to talk to someone from Maine, they have a beautifully fascinating little accent, and they have an expression they use, which is an agreeance that they use when you say something. Like, I don't know if you ever talked to Indian people, Geek. I know there's a lot of Indians living in UK, and you ever hear them go ji or hanji or acha acha. They say that type of thing. Well, that's achaji, hanji. Those are agreeing. Yes, I see. Yes, I understand. What have you? In Maine, they say yep. And it's spelled AYUP. Yep. And it's just this thing they say. Yep. And someone says, that lobster is really good. Yep. It's them saying yup or yep, but they say yup. But they do it so fast and it's so pretty to hear. It's a great accent. I love the Mainlander accent. Sorry.
You said A up here tends to be like a hello, a greeting.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
A up, you're right. I hope you're right.
Yes, Fred Gwynn in Pet Sematary is if you ever go watch the original Pet Sematary, Fred Gwynn does the Maine accent with flawlessly. It's beautiful. Now, the accent I love more than anything else, and no one does it anymore, is the Mid-Atlantic. Now, do you know that accent? If you guys, Sean, you must know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's classic Hollywood.
Yeah, so in the 20s and the 19, I think it was maybe the 10s, they decided that there had to be an educated, posh American accent, and in Canada they called it Canadian fancy. And it's that, well, you see, we're going to go there, father, and we're going to drink the water. And it's that thing you hear. What's her name?
Think Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn.
Katharine Hepburn. They do it to the nines, like they take it in. But you used to hear it in those old radio broadcasts, right? Because all the radio broadcasters were perfecting the Mid-Atlantic accent, they called it, and it's now gone. So in a D&D game, could you have something like that? Could you have an accent that no longer exists or has died off in common use? And now you can identify someone as being a pretentious fuck if you meet them and they're doing that accent. You know what I mean? So you can
perfect for elves.
Yeah, I would use the sort of the received pronunciation Queen's English for that sort of character.
A group of elves talking like radio stars. Quick, we got to launch the arrows at those guys coming over the hill.
The Dark Master is on the move, and we have to get there and stop him immediately. What was it? There was something there. My uncle, by marriage, is from Southampton, I believe. And when he talks, this accent he has is just mush mouth. So you need a skill to understand him. Because he will literally come into a room and go, I was wondering if possible to go out there and get into the drink to take everything in strides. Here's what happens indeed. And me and my aunt are the only people in the family who can understand him when he speaks. Everyone else just looks at him like, what the fuck are you talking about, Roger?
Southampton in England, you mean?
Yeah, he's from Southampton. He was a sailor. But he has his own way of talking. He just matches everything else will think. And it's really adorable to listen to, but I don't get why it happens. I don't know where your accent system in England confuses the fuck out of me. Because the more posh someone is, the less understandable they are. I can't stand that. It's insane.
But I think it's a horseshoe. I think really because you could also have very, very working class Irish, Welsh, Scottish, and they will often have very, very broad accents. So the very posh and the absolute opposite end of the scale are the ones that are very difficult to understand. Yeah. And the rest of us are mostly in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, London. this accent. Apparently, according to the study, because of the BBC broadcasting and the amount of stuff that's happening, the Londonian accent is taking over the UK, and this younger generation tends to speak less regional accents or softer regional accents because they're picking up the London accent from the television and movies. And I remember reading about this about a year ago, and I was like, "That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating." That would be like if everybody sounded like they were from California. It would be terrifying.
Andy says here there isn't really a Southampton accent. There is, Hampshire. It's more. It's a less specific accent there. It's more just a southern sort of accent.
Interesting. Thank you, Andy.
And that's certainly been my experience. There's a guy I watch occasionally on YouTube who's from the Isle of Wight, and it sounds a little bit Londony, but it's not completely Londony. You can tell he's from the south of England, but it's not complete London. That's more the southern sort of accent.
Okay, well, here's a question then. In your campaigns, right? I mean, in a D&D campaign, I mean, we're going to build a world. If you've built a world and you have different cultures and different languages and all that, you start deciding on what accents they're going to have. And you're not just making up accents out of your ass going, "Oh, this person's from the capital. Hello, it is like, you're actually going to go, okay, in the capital, they're going to sound German, right? Do you get so deep into the woods, though, that you go, this is what a posh person from that place is going to sound like, and this is what a commoner is going to sound like?
I'm not good enough at doing accents consistently to even think of that.
Fair.
And that's a simple fact. I mean,
is Elfbait on delay? He just wrote mid-Atlantic accent.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay. I'm like, is he just having like a brain fart? Mid-Atlantic.
I think we've got a few people on delay tonight. I think a few people might. Yeah, and Squirrel says here, language is an organism more than we realize. Yes, it evolves, it morphs, it absorbs, it splits, does all sorts. And yes, I haven't asked him how many fingers he's got on each hand, Andy, but yeah, Isle of Wight and Norfolk round there, they all have.
Which island is the band Wet Leg from? Is that from Isle of Man or the Isle of Wight?
Wet Leg? I don't know.
No, you poor boy. You're missing out on one of the best bands your country's produced in a long time.
I've heard of Wet Leg, but I don't know any of their stuff.
They are from the Isle of Wight.
Right. Okay.
And then they're inbred. And there's a very, very crazy accent there. They're inbred. Is that the story of the Isle of Wight?
Most of the islands. Okay, and Norfolk and Cornwall and those sort of areas, yeah.
60% of Quebecois can trace their ancestry to 5 common ancestors. That's right, it's 80%, 80%, which means 80% of Quebecois are related to each other. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my aunt and uncle had been married for 50 years before they discovered that they were second cousins.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
I'm talking about like 8th cousins 5 times removed here, not second cousins.
Yeah, they'd been married for 50 years until they traced back a couple of generations and found that there was a rare surname that was the maiden name of one of the a maiden name. It was like, oh, hang on, there aren't many people with that with that name, and they then realized that this person was both of their great grandmothers or something, or maybe one more great.
That's crazy. Go nuts.
They've been married happily married for 50 years till they found that out.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares? I mean, God. I mean, it's not such a big deal when it's second cousins and that level of separation and generational separation like that. That's not a huge deal. It's when first cousins marry, you got problems. You know?
Yes. But first cousin marriage is legal in most countries, though, isn't it?
It's illegal in North America. I know that. Though some states, I think some states in the U.S. allow it. I know Canada, it's illegal.
But it's allowed here. I know.
First cousins?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so there's a question. Tolkien, the inspiration of many a D&D campaign over the years, genealogy. Like, how much world design is too much goddamn world design? You know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line on how deep you go into your world? Now, you said you don't bother doing different dialects, but do you worry about royal family genealogies, knowing how nations are connected to each other through marriage?
If it's relevant,
you would.
Yeah, only if it becomes relevant in the game.
Okay. Do you ever run games where that is relevant?
I am running a game of Middle Earth at the moment where I'm having to learn a bit of Tolkien's genealogy stuff.
Why are there 4 guys named Glorfindel? What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm having to learn a little bit about the how the various Dunedain princes of Cardolan might just be related to each other in various ways. I'm having to learn that sort of thing, but no, not generally. As May says, if it's relevant, if it comes up in the general game, then I'll make it up. And it can then become canon from whatever we decide at the time.
All right, flip the script. Make it a component of a Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, why not?
Think about that. Think about what you could do with genealogy if you have a family that has become immersed in, mythos worship going back generations, and like the German monarchy, they've been marrying into different families over the generations and slowly building out this web of mythos worshipping subcult. So suddenly that cop that you've been dealing with, you find out is like their third cousin, you know what I mean? And suddenly he turns on you in the 11th hour or something like that, or that femme fatale turns out to be like a high priestess because she's actually the great aunt of someone, or like you could have a lot of fun with that and really fuck with your players.
There's quite a few Call of Cthulhu scenarios which do feature various generations of families.
Oh, well, then I've lost. I'm obviously just a hack. Thank you.
In fact, there's a I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. There's a very, very good one that haven't yet run, which is all based around a family and how the family has interacted with each other. And it is really quite twisted and unpleasant.
Did you ever read Stormhaven?
No.
So Stormhaven was a module put out by, I think, Flying Buffalo, and it's triple statted. It's triple statted for Mercenary Spies and Private Eyes, Danger International from Hero Games, and Call of Cthulhu. And the module adventure, it's a fantastic product, floor plans of the mansion, you name it. And the whole point is that depending on which game you're running, there's different things that will happen in the module. And the Cthulhu one is where it gets really fucking weird. That's the one where it's just like, what the fuck? But it's all about that. It's all about family and breeding and stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, General Nuts mentioned it. Innsmouth is the ultimate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised you've barely played Call of Cthulhu, Bear, because the way when I've seen you talk about scenarios and whatever, it seems to me that Call of Cthulhu would be your sort of game.
Well, sorry, hang on. I read plenty of mythos in my day, right? Books, novels, the stories, the actual origin source stuff. And I just, the kind of games I like to run, the kind of games I like to play, Cthulhu misses the mark for me at the end of the day.
All right.
I don't like the feeling of hopelessness. And I'm sorry. Cthulhu is hopeless. You can't win. You can never win. No matter what you do, you can never fucking win. The best.
So it's like being married.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know. But it's like, the best you can hope for is die with your sanity. You know what I mean? Get killed before you go insane. That's the best. The dice came up in my favor. I died.
I'd say it's the other way around. You go insane, so you don't feel it when you die.
Well, that's a philosophical debate for another time. So. I don't know. I just like to have some hope, right? So when I run horror games, I like to run stuff like Chill, where it's like there's some hope, there's a chance. I mean, not much of a chance, and players will be players and they'll fuck up anyway. But at least there's a chance.
It depends on the tone of what you're running, though, doesn't it? It really does. I think the one I was thinking of was in Was it the old damned house? I think it's the old damned house in Mansions of Madness. That is, yes, it is. It's got to be. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the old damned house is the one that has got lots of family ties in it.
Nice.
Yes.
I want to play in, or I want to run Savage Swords versus the Outer Darkness. Because when Primeval Thule came up on Kickstarter, I backed it. Because what they promised me on paper was Conan versus Cthulhu. And I was like, okay, I'm fucking in. Because that whole line he has about, they're slick as fleas beyond the light of the world, but when they come to this world, they have to take form, and any amount of steel and grit can kill one. And I always thought that was a fantastic idea. The idea of you can, as long as they're in our real world, you can kill them. They're not undefeatable, but the cults are trying to bring the worlds together so that they will be undefeatable, and you're a bunch of crazy, savage Hyborians running around trying to stop these cults and craziness. So when Primeval Thule came out, it was advertising itself as Cthulhu versus Conan, essentially. And then I got it, and it was just fucking D&D. It was just, here's the elves, here's the dwarves. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I've been dying, and I do have Greyhawk Grognard's Cthulhu book that he did, Adventures in Darkness or whatever it is. But I really want someone to just do not scrape off the serial numbers, but I want someone to do a Conan versus Cthulhu campaign setting, or a Conan versus Cthulhu role-playing game. Just fuck, I want that.
So Swords and Sorcery meets Cthulhu.
Yeah.
But Swords and Sorcery style stories have those otherworldly eldritch monsters anyway, so it's already baked into to most style settings.
But no one does it in the published material as a general rule. When you go look at the published material, they either lean heavily into the Conan, or they start leaning into Elric, or they do what the Atlantis from Capera Games does, which is it's fucking D&D again, or Primeval Thule is just D&D with different paint. It's like no. I want to lean in heavily to both aspects at the same time, and make the game about you are picking a side. You're either people trying to stop this shit from happening, or you're the people trying to make this shit happen. You could play your campaign either way you want.
And of course, the theme of hopelessness is, as you say, it's crucial to Cthulhu games for me, for the feel of it. I'm trying to work out how you could get a Swords and Sorcery meets Cthulhu.
Did you ever see the movie Mandy? Nicolas Cage?
No.
Okay. You want to know how to do it? Watch Mandy with Nicolas Cage. It's probably the best, most insane, and very Cthulhuid movie he's ever made. Like, never mind Color from Outer Space. This movie is fucked. It's a Cthulhu story. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it doesn't say Cthulhu. Then the word Cthulhu will never come up, but I'm telling you, it's a Cthulhu story, but he is a fucking Howard character in it.
But is it, if it's remotely gory, then I won't watch it.
Insanely gory.
Then no, I can't. You better just tell me the plot now, because I won't watch it.
Spoilers for everybody listening. Spoilers are going to be in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Basically, he and his girlfriend are at a cabin in the woods type thing where they go to. I can't remember if he's a wood ranger, like a warden or something. But he basically, they cross a cult. And the cult leader takes a fancy to his girlfriend, Mandy, and decides to recruit her for his harem, and then winds up killing her. And Nicolas Cage goes on an epic fucking revenge against the cult. And I mean, like, it's insane. I can't, there aren't words in my vocabulary to explain to you how insane and cool and death metal and Cthulhu and Conan this fucking thing is. It's insane. It's amazing. Anyway.
And if he wins, that's when the hero element sort of takes over.
Exactly. But the thing is when he wins, if he wins, he's forever damaged by this experience.
That's fine. That's fine.
He's not the hero who's going to go to the pub and quip with his buddies after the thing. He's going to wander off into the woods and walk until nature claims him and he's gone from this world because he can no longer see the world without seeing the black Icarus tendrils that are wrapped around so much of it.
So he's Frodo Baggins.
Well, after a fashion.
Anyway, General Nut, I think we've spoilers are over. Spoilers are over. So you can put the sound back on now. But I think Andy's got a good name here for the sort of game you want to play.
Swords Insanity. I like Savage Swords versus the Outer Dark. That's the one I like. It just feels right to me. But that's okay. Swords Insanity works. Or are you referring to something called Swords Insanity, Andy?
Well, no. I think that'd be the name of the game. That would Swords Insanity would be the.
To answer General Nut, Aliens is not cosmic horror. Alien is cosmic horror. The first one. That is cosmic horror. That is Cthulhuid horror. It's the idea that the universe is indifferent to the existence of mankind, and they find out the hard way how indifferent it is on this one random thing. Aliens is an action film. You know what I mean? It's not Cthulhu. It's Rambo versus Xenomorph. The problem with the Alien franchise is that they've gone back to the well so many times and they've overdone the story and they've given an origin to all this shit. It's like, no, go watch Alien. It's cosmic horror at its finest. It's the indifference of the universe to the plight of man, this arrogant creature walking amongst the stars, not understanding that the stars are a fucking tumbler lock. And when they align in the right way, the lock opens and the new horror comes out that will just fucking kill us. It's awesome. I love that shit. Dark Stars. Is it Dark Star? No, what's that game? Dead Star, Dead Planet, Dead something, Dead Space.
Dead Space. Yeah.
That is the kind of level of cosmic horror that's cool, you know? Oh, Conan versus Cthulhu is Aliens, I mean. Well, if you play it that way, sure. Well, on that note, I've killed the conversation.
So, I mean, we are in the
we're in the rambling phase. So
I do have to apologise for my fidgetiness tonight. My chair has actually broken, and if you watched my video yesterday, I recorded. You kept hearing this little clicking in the background. That's because one of the legs on my chair is actually broken, and the center of the chair is now resting on the ground, and the wheelie bits are sort of all off at odd angles. So I'm I'm rocking around. It's like, it doesn't sit still anymore, which is an absolute pain. It's a pain in the backside. I need a new chair. But what was I going to say? Because we are on the rambling part. So you both of you have already said that you've done a bit of acting. Yeah. So I'm just going to simply ask what your finest hour in the acting business has been.
On the business? Okay, damn, because there's a couple of ladies I could mention that it was my finest acting. But I'll let Sean go first, please.
Oh no, you were asked first. You
No, I wasn't. You were asked first. Welcome to Canadian Actors, by the way. No, I don't want to talk about myself. Talk about yourself.
I left the business for a reason, but
yep, I did too. The rest got up my ass.
Yeah, let me see. See you around, squirrel.
Take it easy, squirrel. Enjoy that pizza.
Yeah, it's like I look at my body at work and go, cringe. Oh God, what was I thinking? The best times I've had were, the smaller stuff. Like I did a production of 12 Angry Men 14 years ago, which, that was just, we had such a great time. It was a good show. We had the crowds. So that was like a high point, and that wasn't even like a professional gig. That was just one I wanted.
You told me about it because it's one of my favorite films, and you were Juror 8, I believe. Which is
the Henry Fonda role, yeah.
Yeah, the Henry Fonda, so one of the key roles. So you had a good meaty role in it.
And I think I mentioned before, but that production starred a then 16-year-old, 17-year-old Mina Masood long before he got into the acting gig and became Aladdin.
Nice. I'd never heard that name before. I don't know much about films, sadly.
He was the live action Aladdin in the remake. That's all.
Was it? All right. Okay.
But he packed up, moved to LA, and just got the gig of a lifetime.
Yeah, no shit.
So go on, Bear. Can you top 12 Angry Men?
Can I top? No, this is not a top. This is not a one-up game. Come on. How many actors does it take to change a light bulb, you old geek?
How many actresses does it take?
How many actors does it take to change a light bulb?
An infinite number, because because I don't know. I don't know.
6. One to change it, and the rest to talk about how they could have done it better.
Exactly. 6 actors. Want to change it and 5 to go? I can do that better. That's the nature of actors. There's 2 types of actor you will meet in the world. There are people who love to act, and there are narcissists who need fucking attention. And the way you can tell the difference between the two is one will never want to talk about their work, and the other can't shut the fuck up about their work. But I will answer your question. There are 2 pieces of work that I'm particularly proud of, and I will always be proud of, because I think they're some of the better work I've done, and they were some of the better experiences I had working on set. My 3 episodes of Eureka absolutely were just fantastic and fun. And when I came out of retirement back in 2016 or something like that, and I did 1 episode of a show called Real Detective, not to be confused with True Detective, where I played a serial killer, and that was absolutely fantastic.
If I was ever going to act, I'd love to play a bad guy, but I've never. The only acting I've ever done was in school plays. And I was often picked for a big role in the school plays because I had a big mouth. That was it. It wasn't nothing to do with any acting ability. I just made myself heard. That was it. My only TV appearances have been quiz shows. I've been on quite a lot of quiz shows here in the UK. But,
oh, nice.
So, Bear, do you know? Sorry, I was just about to say, do you know the difference between an actor and a mutual fund?
Oh, no. What? Tell me, please.
Well, mutual funds eventually mature and make money.
Oh, nice.
And on the topic of narcissists, do you know the difference between God and a director?
I believe I've heard this joke, but please share.
Well, God never pretended to be a director.
Exactly. One of my favorite lines ever from Mystery Science Theater 3000 was in Santa Claus Conquers the Martian, when Santa's introducing the toys, and he introduces this one little doll. She's like a real live girl. She cries, she eats, she sleeps, and then Crow goes, but really she wants to direct. It's just like, yes, this is the problem.
This is sort of an industry joke, is it, for actor types?
Yes, absolutely. Look, it's a strange business, especially when you get into the business aspect of it. It's a very strange business based around. So I worked in radio for a number of years, and I eventually quit radio. And people asked me why I quit radio, and I said there was 2 reasons I quit radio. One, if you don't have a habit, be it drinking, pot, coke, whatever it is, if you don't have a habit, the industry just is too brutal. It's too hard. It spits you out. It's a rough thing to be in. And second, why I prefer the film industry and being on set is because whether they like me or not, there are people whose job it is to kiss my ass all day long and treat me nicely. Whereas in radio, everybody's undercutting everybody, stabbing everybody in the back and trying to fuck each other over for nothing. There's no money to be made there. You're just doing it because you're an asshole who likes to fuck people over.
As gamers, did you ever read a part and then mentally think of how your character would appear in terms of D&D stats?
No.
Oh, I'm disappointed.
No, but I will say this. My acting would only be as good as it is because of the years of role-playing I did. Because role-playing gave me the chance to play characters I would never be cast as. And because casting is very superficial. I'm 6'3". I literally was cast in an episode of the X-Files and then uncast because I was supposed to play a sailor in a submarine having a fight with the captain, and then they cast the captain and he was 5'4". And they went, well, this ain't gonna work, and so I lost the part. But then I got to be on Millennium instead, which was really nice, and that made me really happy because I got to meet Lance Henriksen, who's my fucking hero. And he was a great guy. But absolutely. Character voices, character personalities, things that I would never get a chance to do on screen, I got to perfect and do behind the DM's table. And when I would go to auditions, I could easily tap into some character I played somewhere along the way in my role playing and bring them to life for the casting director.
For me, it was the opposite. My time in the business made my gaming better.
Oh, let's say hello, Ray Prime. You have joined us. What we're in the rambling phase. If you want to, the bit about stats was from about 15 minutes in till about 2 hours in. And we've just been rambling ever since.
This ties into it, right? Because we're talking about acting, we're talking about role playing, we're talking about your stats. Christ, there's a thing I used to do when I want to play a stupid character, or I want to show a character who's of very low intelligence and a thick, unthinking sort of, and I automatically think of A Clockwork Orange and go, don't call me dim no more neither. And like that lets me immediately connect to that thought process and then be able to bring that character out at the table.
But I will say, obviously, my only appearances on TV have been in game shows. But when you have to audition to go on game shows, and even when you do that audition, you almost have to project a character because you've got to think before you go for the audition what they want on the game show.
Oh, for sure.
The first audition I ever went for was for I don't know if you get it over your side of the Atlantic, one called The Weakest Link. And I didn't get through that audition. And I quickly realized it's because they wanted people to be quite acidic, quite bitchy. And I had
The Weakest Link. Goodbye.
Exactly. So I thought, right, next time I go to an audition, I'm going to plan a little bit better and try and work out what it is they want. And when I went for my audition for The Chase, I knew they wanted people to be quite coarse, quite gobshite, quite confident, willing to sort of give a bit of verbal back to the chaser. And so I basically went into that audition pre-planned. I knew the sort of things they were going to ask me. I pre-planned most of it. And there were 12 of us in the audition. And they wanted about 3 or 4 people, and they picked me from about halfway through the audition because I just took over it, took it over. I didn't want to come across as being popular or pleasant or whatever. It didn't matter if I was getting right answers or wrong answers. And what mattered was I was giving answers, and giving a bit of verbal, and that worked. And when I actually went on the show itself, they said to me straight away, "We loved your attitude in the audition. Bring it into the studio." And then I got the chaser I got was the one who was a former stand-up comedian who tore me to bits. Stand-up comedians know how to take down gobby little shites.
Oh, yes, they do.
But it made for decent telly. And then when I went out, that next show after I went on after that was one called Mastermind. If you've ever seen that, and I basically they just wanted to be clever and answer questions, so I just turned up in my suit and tie from work and just sat there and answered questions.
Nice,
and it worked. So it's giving us a bit of persona.
Well, the best story I've ever heard about an actor getting a part was, and he's unfortunately, I believe, passed away. He's no longer with us. Was a local Montreal actor who walked in, looked at the casting director, and said, "Whatever I do, promise me you will tape this and show this to the producers." And she said, "All right, I'll do it." And all right, we're rolling. And he laid down on the table backwards, hung his head over the table, threw the script in the air and said, "I will not do your fucking piece of shit movie," and walked out. And through her word, she showed that to the producers, and they cast him. Because the thing you learn, I learned this as well. There's two things you have to understand when you're going into an audition. Now, I worked as what was called a reader, which is when they're coming into audition for the thing, there's someone else sitting there reading the script opposite them, and that's called a reader. And you can really help them and help their audition by giving them energy, but not overstaging them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Readers are very valuable. And for actors, you learn a shit ton about the audition process because you're still in the room after the guy leaves, and you hear what the producers and directors say. So the two things I learned was this. One, they know you can act. They already know you can act. That's why you're showing up for the audition. They want to see if you're a pain in the ass because they're going to be on set and busy and stressed. And the last thing they need is you being a prima donna fuck who's causing them extra stress all day long. So that's number one. Number two, and this I learned from a producer, one of the producers on Are You Afraid of the Dark, Bill Bonecutter, who said, as soon as you're done your audition, have somewhere else to be. Do not be standing around going, oh, I can do that differently if you'd like, or when are you guys plan? When is shooting going to start? Or just be like, all right, thanks, and walk out. If they want you to do it again, they will ask you. This happened to me when I auditioned for Millennium, where basically I finished my part. I walked out the door and walked down the hall at the Lionsgate Studios in North Vancouver. And by the time I got to the stairs, the casting assistant was chasing me, going, can you come back? We'd like you to read another part. Can you come back? Can you come back? And I'm like, absolutely, I'll come back. You know, in my head, I'm like, you just chased me down a fucking hall. You bet your fucking ass I'm coming back.
Yeah, I've got this. See, that's what you think.
And I booked it. And I booked it because I learned the lessons of get the fuck out of their way. Don't be that guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's a lot of actors, and you do this in theater too and stuff like that. There's just a lot of actors who have a deep attention deficit. Their mommy and daddy, what's wrong with you, Private Pile? Did your mommy and daddy not love you enough? Well, that's where we're at with them. And or they would love them too much, and they think everybody should pay attention to them. And as a result, they are fucking nightmares to work with. There's an actor who's famous who I will not say his name, but when I arrived on a particular show doing my guest star spot, the entire cast was like, oh my God, you're so wonderful to work with because he was here as the guest star last time and we fucking hated him. And I'm like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? And then I wound up working with him 2 years later. And I was like, and I saw it and I'm like, oh fuck. He was one of these actors. And again, by the way, everybody listening knows who I'm talking about. If I were to say his name, you'd know who it was. You've seen him. And literally, I watched him almost every take give notes to the director. Hey, yeah, can we do this way instead? Can I change it over to this instead? And constantly be slowing down the process and making the day longer and longer and longer. That is a nightmare. You're not Tom Cruise. You know what I mean? You're not Bruce Willis. You're not even Steven Seagal.
Well, when Tom Cruise does it, he's the one usually paying the bills because he produces his own stuff. So
yeah, and when Bruce Willis does it, or even Steven Seagal, they're the one bringing the money at the end of this process. People are coming to see them. Mm-hmm. If you're some moderate day player who's known for being a character actor, shut the fuck up and do your job. Hit your mark, say your lines, and shut the fuck up. It's like the simplest thing in the world, and you'd be amazed how few people understand it in the film industry. Just do not get it. I've seen actors talk themselves out of parts. Do the audition, kill it, get the part, and then and watch the producer and director just go, ugh, and like, fuck that, no way.
I mean, I've interviewed for jobs before, and I've had people do that where they've interviewed really well, and then we've sort of shown them a little bit around the office, and it's just been like, yeah, you're coming across as too eager. You're too eager. Yeah. Too eager. No, we can't work with you.
Yeah, agreed. I love Daniel Kearney's thing. I met Tom Cruise. I pissed off his producer so much he came over and asked for a truce. I almost want to know that story, Daniel. There's a part of me that's like, what did you do to piss off Tom Cruise's producer? Like, I mean, you know.
I think the most famous person I ever met and had a proper decent chat with was Donny Osmond.
Oh, wow.
He was hosting a game show I was on, and it was the first ever episode to be recorded of that game show in Britain. and there were tons and tons and tons of technical issues. And he spent most of the time just perched on the end of the desk that I was sat behind, just chatting away.
Oh yeah,
just chatting. And I must have spent 4 or 5 hours between all the takes, chatting away. And he was lovely. He was a really nice guy, really, really down to earth, really friendly.
You meet them, like that's the thing. There have been name people I've met over the years who are absolutely fabulous, just wonderful people. And there are name people who I've met over the years who I wouldn't cross the street to piss on if they were on fire. You know, it's just the way it is.
I'd say Donny Osmond's teeth really are that white in real life.
Hey, we're getting a bounce off your teeth. Can we get some dulling spray on those, please?
What was funny about that show as well, though, was because it was a brand new show and hadn't been advertised very much, they were struggling to get an audience for it. And they were filming multiple shows each day. And we watched quite a few of it. And the audience was exactly the same for every single show. And they were all female, aged between 40 and 60. And they'd all come from the British branch of the Donny Osmond fan club. It was just banks and banks and banks of women who were purely there to gawp at Donny Osmond. That was it. They weren't there for us at all.
A buddy of mine's dad used to be a blackjack dealer in Las Vegas in the late 60s, early 70s. And Tom Jones was playing, and he went on his break because they were allowed to go see shows for free. He went to see Tom Jones, and he said, he goes, I walked in, and the amount of panties and hotel keys that had landed on stage, I just turned around and walked back out because I was just like, nope, I can't be in this scene at all. Starfuckers are strange people, man.
Yeah.
The worst part is when you meet someone who is technically a star and they're a star fucker. That's weird. That's always like, you just kind of go, what the fuck? But dude, you're behind the scenes. You know these people are flawed. You know they're not what they present in the real world. But I've met people like that who are like, they know, but they're still just attracted to the celebrity. And I think that celebrity has its own attraction, you know? It's its own thing.
It absolutely does. That's a whole psychological profile.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And name droppers. They're the other ones I want to fucking murder. Ugh.
Like me name dropping Mina Masood earlier.
Yeah, exactly, fucker. No, I mean name droppers. You name dropped. There's a difference between doing it once and doing it non-fucking stop. Hey, Daniel.
Oh. I was going to bend myself into position so I can get my mouse. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel.
Daniel says the movie All the Right Moves. They had a scene in my alley. My garage is in the movie. We played Led Zeppelin really loud. They bitched, so they started up the two-stroke dirt. So we started the two-stroke dirt bikes. I love that movie, All the Right Moves. So that's awesome, dude. It's great.
Have you ever seen the film Clockwise with John Cleese?
No.
That was filmed in my school when I was a teenager.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, there was quite a bit of a buzz around the school. We had to stay out of certain parts of the school when they were filming.
Of course.
It was only a small scene that was actually filmed in my school, but great watching it to just see that couple of minutes. It's like, oh, that's where I learnt Latin. that sort of thing. But yeah, I remember that being quite fun.
Yeah, I've had moments like that for both movies shot in Montreal and Vancouver. It's like, I've pissed drunkenly in this alley one night. That's not Washington, D.C. I know where that is. I've been drunk in there, you know? So, yeah.
Or if you watched Strange New Worlds last week, they actually set it in Toronto, I think for budgetary reasons.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the streets going, okay, well, they just walked from one street to another, but that's like halfway across the city, so that doesn't line up. And
the best is there's the Angelina Jolie movie about the serial killers, not Bone Collector, but the one she did later, where at one point in time they're in Quebec because they shot here, and they're in Montreal, and they have a moment where they show the Chateau Frontenac in Quebec City, and this caption across the bottom of the stream says Montreal, Canada, and we're all like, that's 4 fucking hours away in another city. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's like the most famous building in Quebec City. What the hell are you doing? Like, that's not Montreal. We're gonna go to Quebec City. It's about 30 minutes up the road. It's 4 fucking hours away. What are you talking about? Like, it's amazing.
I love that episode of The Simpsons where they went to Toronto and they show the CN Tower surrounded by this sea of green trees. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not then.
No.
It's a concrete jungle.
The city of Toronto is surrounded by a sea of green trees, but the city
But
itself,
not in the core city. No.
fuck no.
See, there's a lot of green in my city, Birmingham. Very, very green. You don't see it so much from the city centre. It's just.
Well, it's true of most city centers, but that's the joke in the Toronto episode. Like even at the base of the CN Tower, it was all green. I'm like, wait. That's Union Station down there. It's a cut. Like I said, it should be all buildings, but it was a joke. I mean, obviously, the Simpsons.
Clearly. That's it. We're going back to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we have reached pumpkin time. We have reached pumpkin hour, and we have successfully filled an hour with just random rambling. Which is
my work
marvelous.
is done.
Yes. So for those of you who have joined the stream in the last half hour or so and listened to us talk nonsense, that we were on topic for most of about 2 hours, yes, which was rather good of us, and we did discuss how stats can inform your role play and things like that, and it wasn't really a lot to talk about, but yeah, I think we gave our opinions. We tended to agree on most things. And
I disagree.
and it was nice to see Saxius back on stream. I know he's been very, very busy with work recently, so good to have Saxius back. And if you've not done so already, make sure you check out Mage's Musings channel and Bear, the Gen X GM channel. Both of my current stream companions have their channels. We like to share the love, don't we? We share the love.
I love you guys. I'm making you feel uncomfortable.
Yes, minions, barf with all this sacred sweetness.
That's exactly the sort of thing I want to hear. Exactly. Right? So, and of course, Mage, you've just hit your 1,000 and you've done your giveaway. Do you know when the video is going to be up for that?
I'm working on. I was refining the writing. I'm hoping to have it up this weekend. I've done the draws, so I have the names of the winners. And my big thing was just how did I want to present? And I know you had suggested a live stream. That doesn't quite work for how I do things with the puppets. It's just too complex to live stream with the puppets, especially as a one-man show. And I don't have the setup and the gear and the kit. So I'm just preparing a presentation and trying to make it fun. That'll be, I guess, that'll see what happens in the wash.
Yeah, I mean, you could have always presented it as you. I mean,
that's just not fun.
But you could have had a puppet on your hand and just be having a chat with your puppet on your hand.
Yeah, but then you said my lips moving, and it's not the same. But I got something. I cobbled together a script that I think I liked well enough, and so we'll see. So yeah, I've basically got it. The puppeteering is the hard part. That's the most time-consuming part. All the other voiceover recording I can crack off now that I've got things where I want them. So soon, yes, with hopefully by the end of this weekend. People keep pestering me for my time. It's a funny thing that keeps coming up. It's like, hey, can you? My sister just texted me as we were talking. Can you dog sit tomorrow? It's like,
Bear. And Bear, you've just hit 1,500, haven't you, recently?
Recently, yeah, it's quite. I don't know why people keep coming to my channel. I'm abusive. I have opinions. I don't agree with people. I say controversial things, but people keep showing up. It's weird.
I just plateaued at 1,490, and according to the Social Blade site, I've been gaining and losing 10 subs every day for the last couple of weeks.
Oh, wow!
Whereas I've actually been gaining and losing one I'll be going from 1489 to 1490 to 1489 to 1490. It's just the way it rounds it.
Yeah,
right.
just been bouncing between the two. But I've sort of become stuck about 1490. It doesn't matter.
Well,
but
that's how I feel about it. I don't care how many subs I have. It doesn't matter to me at all.
You just want people to engage and just that's all. That's all we ever really ask for. Just engage. Watch our stuff, ask us questions, come and join us on the streams, have a chat.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I don't need a YouTube silver play button behind me, and I don't ever want this to be my job. So, yeah.
No. It's nice if it earns you a little bit behind.
I wish I could earn enough to buy a book every month, or even a pizza. That'd be something. But no, man. In the meantime, in the in-between time, it's just fun.
Well, I currently need a job, so if this could become the job and pay enough, I wouldn't say no to that.
Everyone tell 100,000 of your closest friends to go subscribe to Mage, please.
Yeah, so
please.
Watch all these videos and make sure
$2.66 so far. It's like, woo! What am I going to do with that?
Not get it because you have to get 100.
You get 100. Yeah.
Fucking Google.
Yeah. But thank you for everyone who has had a few donations on the stream tonight, which has been marvelous. Which is why I do have nerd written on my hand there, and ultra mega dorks written on my wrist, which is already fading. Of course, if you ever want to call me anything else, as I said earlier, for $50, I'll write it on my forehead, and I'll go to work the next day with it still written on my forehead.
Would that include the word unemployable?
You just wear a hat.
Okay, right. So it is time to draw it to a close. So
thank you,
everyone.
Daniel, by the way. Sorry.
Thank you, everyone who's joined in chat, and I love Daniel's story because Daniel is now playing D&D with his family because they started listening to these sort of streams and they became intrigued by it, and he now has a game going with his family as a result.
So our job here is done.
Thank you, Doom. Thank you, Latveria. Good night.
Cheers all. Right, end of stream.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. We don't know how this thing works. We can't come back. Oh no.